Chapter 691. This late student Yiqing Luo, I'm not deaf and I can hear your voice. Dmo Xian's slender fingers pointed to the side of the table. So, you will stand here until I announce the dismissal. Was this the rhythm of being punished to stand? How could this man be so childish? The students were all stunned. Especially Qiao Jin and the rest, they directly laughed out in an unkind manner. When had they ever seen Yiqing Luo in this state? When had they ever seen Yiqing Luo suffering a setback, wanting to get angry but suppressing her anger with a sullen look? This Master Supreme Mo was really incredible. The moment he came to Devil class, he easily broke through their 2 Academy Gates checkpoint and even convinced Master Guiyu. Now, he even molested Yiqing Luo in front of them, punishing her. Forgive them. She really couldn't hold it in. Yiqing Luo stared angrily at him. Qiao Jin and the rest laughed even louder. Qing Luo, this is the stepping stone for Devil class to step out of Devil class's courtyard. You all know each other so everything can be discussed. Calling him a stepping stone in front of Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian didn't mind. His lips curled as he nodded in a serious manner. Student Yiqing Luo, stand over there. Mo Yuing, who was standing by the side, walked up 2 steps as she tilted her head and opened her big black eyes wide. Master Supreme Mo, I'm late too. Dmo Xian's gaze was still fixed on Yiqing Luo as his voice was gentle. There are always accidents in everything. On account that this is your first time being late, I won't punish you. Mo Yuing blinked her eyes. After some time, she finally reacted as she nodded her head heavily. Oh. Following that, she took small steps back to her own seat. At this moment, not only Qiao Jin was holding his stomach in laughter, the other students also couldn't hold it in. Knowing that Yiqing Luo and Master Supreme Mo were acquainted, Yiqing Luo didn't have any resistance towards Master Supreme Mo. Devil class's students naturally retracted their enmity as they watched the show. Anyone could tell that Master Supreme Mo was intentionally teasing Yiqing Luo. It was rare to see the fearless, overbearing and domineering Yiqing Luo revealing such a sullen expression. Damn it, there was no need for such differential treatment. To think that this man could still punish her with a straight face. Dmo Xian ignored Yiqing Luo's furious gaze as he walked past her and returned to the side of the counter, turning to look at the students who were laughing out loud. Everyone, please be quiet. Before coming here, I asked Old Man Guiyu about your situation. You can rest assured that since I am your teacher, I will definitely treat you as my students and teach you well. Dmo Xian started to speak and every single word and sentence indicated that for the next few months, he would definitely be staying in the Devil class. The students below were infected by his words. Their expressions of watching the show gradually turned serious. Yiqing Luo stood by the side of the counter and was very close to him. She could clearly see that when he was speaking, that pair of peach blossom eyes was flowing with a serious luster. Dmo Xian had disguised himself as Supreme Mo and came to the academy, pretending to be meeting her for the first time in Devil class. He must have his reasons. Yiqing Luo would not intentionally expose him. It was just that he was filled with curiosity, unable to guess Dmo Xian's motive for doing so. It was absolutely not because he wanted to stay by her side, so he intentionally disguised himself as Supreme Mo and came to Devil class. Just as Yiqing Luo was staring at Dmo Xian, secretly guessing, she heard the man's clear voice ringing. Student Yiqing Luo, who is late, come over and distribute these basic training books to every student. Yiqing Luo regained her senses as her vision followed Dmo Xian's finger and saw that on the counter, there was a stack of green books. Chapter 692. Huh? Late student Yiqing Luo, I will misunderstand if you look at me affectionately like that. Dmo Xian squinted his peach blossom eyes and immediately retreated behind Old Man Guiyu. That won't do, I'm a master and you're a student. Yiqing Luo's lips twitched. Be a master then be a good master. Couldn't you have a little bit of a master's solemnity? Couldn't you have a little bit of a master's immortal air? The other students were shocked. One by one, they stared at the two of them on the counter in bewilderment. Why did they suddenly feel that this combination looked so harmonious? Why did they feel that the master and their own boss's eyes met each other, and just a few simple sentences, they could feel the blinding light? The students were stunned for a long time and suddenly slapped their own heads hard. What harmony! What blinding light! Their own boss and the Overlord were a pair. This unknown evaluator was just a passerby. How could he be compared to the Overlord? Yiqing Luo merely shot a glance, and other than Long Yunzhan and the other students' actions were the same, patting their heads at the same frequency, and she knew what they were thinking about in their minds. The corner of her mouth twitched even more. Damn it! What happened to the feudal thinking of the ancient people? She knelt down in front of this gossiping and imagination ability. Yiqing Luo stared at Dmo Xian resentfully and strode over to pick up a stack of basic training books. Yes, master, I'll distribute them to the other students now. When she passed by Dmo Xian, Yiqing Luo's petite body suddenly stiffened. The man with the stinky face actually secretly pinched her waist in a blind spot where no one could see. Yiqing Luo turned her head and stared at him, only to see that he was still smiling warmly and continued to chat with the students. She endured. Wait and see how she would teach him a lesson in private. Yiqing Luo gritted her teeth and distributed the books to the students one by one. Everyone looked at Yiqing Luo with an expression of wanting to ask but not daring to. Yiqing Luo had an urge to give Dmo Xian a good beating. Finally, under the baptism of the whole class, all the basic books were distributed and Yiqing Luo immediately returned to the counter. Dmo Xian took out a stack of white paper and wrote a few simple words on it, which seemed to be something like a questionnaire. His shimmering peach blossom eyes looked at Yiqing Luo quietly. Dmo Xian stretched out his hand and pointed. Student Yiqing Luo who is late, and these student questionnaires, distribute them to the class. Since they were going to hand out the questionnaire, why didn't they take it out earlier and let her hand out the foundational books as well? Was he doing it on purpose? Yiqing Luo suppressed her anger as she strode over and grabbed the questionnaire on the counter, not forgetting to turn his head to glare fiercely at Dmo Xian as he gave a cold snort. With this turn of her head, Yiqing Luo's entire body directly crashed into Dmo Xian's chest. She was filled with anger, so her actions were naturally hurried and impatient. It was as if he had hit a wall. The survey forms in his hands flew to the ground. Qing Luo. Long Yunzhan couldn't sit still as he immediately stood up, wanting to rush up to help Yiqing Luo. However, he was stopped by a hand. It was Qiao Jin. Long Yunzhan frowned as his azure blue eyes stirred a whirlpool. But he saw Qiao Jin slowly shaking his head as his peripheral vision shot towards Yiqing Luo's direction and his dark eyes met Long Yunzhan's eyes. The other students couldn't tell. How could they possibly not be able to tell? Did Yiqing Luo look like the kind of person who allowed herself to be trampled upon, to allow others to disrespect her, yet she was willing to endure it? Don't think that Yiqing Luo's expression was sullen, bearing a look of enduring silently. But that pair of quick-witted eyes, when it congealed towards Supreme Mo, would overflow with a faint tender feeling. Chapter 693. Yiqing Luo continued to bear with it. Squatting down, she picked up the questionnaire on the ground. At the same time, Dmo Xian also squatted down. Both of them silently picked up the questionnaire on the ground. The entire classroom fell into a strange silence. The students didn't know if it was because Long Yunzhan and the rest didn't move, so they didn't move, or were stunned by Yiqing Luo and Master Mo Xian's interaction. No one went up to help, all of them stood on the spot, looking at them in a daze. Yiqing Luo scolded Dmo Xian for being childish in her heart, but there was a faint sweet feeling lingering in her heart. Just as she was picking up the questionnaire, a large palm suddenly covered the back of her hand. There were thin calluses on the fingertips of her broad and thick palms, which were faintly stirring her palms. Yiqing Luo's little hand trembled, as she wanted to retract it, but it was held tightly by the man's fingers. "Let go!" Yiqing Luo suppressed her voice, as she stretched out her other hand, to pry Dmo Xian's hand away. He didn't let go, only curling his thin lips, as his peach blossom eyes gazed at Yiqing Luo with a smile yet not a smile. Following that, he leaned over and placed the questionnaire which he had picked up into Yiqing Luo's arms. His fingers faintly brushed past her body. When he leaned over, Dmo Xian's sandalwood fragrance, which made one's heart palpitate, and that strong man's breath, sprayed onto her body. Yiqing Luo turned her head away, as her cheeks started to heat up. Dmo Xian's smile deepened, as he slowly moved his body away. Before he moved away, he used their voices as he laughed softly. "Lil Luer, this kind of secret love, is it exciting?" Yiqing Luo's cheeks instantly flushed red. What secret love? What was exciting? This man was really childish to the max. Yiqing Luo held the questionnaire tightly, as she abruptly stood up, and stared at Dmo Xian resentfully, as she carried the questionnaire and walked towards the direction of the students. She was overbearing, as she held a questionnaire, as she slammed her palm heavily on the table. The students were stunned by her imposing manner, so how would they dare to ask a single word? After she finished distributing the questionnaire, Yiqing Luo didn't even take a look at Dmo Xian as she swung her hand and left the classroom, heading directly to the class committee room. After Yiqing Luo left, the students in the classroom, how could they still put their thoughts on the basic training books and the survey forms, as they looked at each other in dismay? They really couldn't understand what was the relationship between their boss and supreme teacher. Dmo Xian's rosy lips curled upwards, until Yiqing Luo's figure disappeared from his sight. He turned his head around, facing the students below. At this moment, his expression became extremely serious. "It doesn't matter if it's the class of gods or the class of devils. To me, all students are equal. I know that you are preparing to participate in the interclass competition in 8 months. That is the only chance for you to wash away the label of trash. In that competition, the Academy headquarters will also send a few elders to the Heavenly Academy to observe. That is also a chance for you to show off your skills." Pausing for a moment, Dmo Xian's serene black eyes swept past all the students in front of him. His tone became solemn once again. "So, I will teach in your class, and in the interclass competition 8 months later, I will do my best to help you, and I hope that all the students can cooperate." The students' vision all turned towards Long Yunzhan. Towards this teacher who seemed to be familiar with Madame Qing Luo, they maintained a wait-and-see attitude. Long Yunzhan nodded expressionlessly, as his expression remained cold and aloof. But, if one looked carefully, they could still discover. Chapter 694. Dmo Xian narrowed his eyes, as he could naturally see Long Yunzhan's displeasure. He also understood the reason why Long Yunzhan didn't like him. He did not mind and clapped his hands. "Have a good rest today. From tomorrow onwards, I will work with old man Guyu to officially train you." After dismissing the students, Dmo Xian walked out of the classroom. He wiped away the warm smile in his eyes and looked around the corridor outside the school. Just as he was about to take a step forward, a figure blocked his way. "It's you." Qiao Jin crossed his arms and leaned against the wooden door of the academy. He narrowed his eyes as he sized up Dmo Xian. Although he suspected that this Supreme Master Mo could possibly be Dmo Xian. But if he didn't personally admit it, Qiao Jin would feel that something was wrong. Because of this, he stopped Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian raised his brows. "Student Qiao Jin, what do you think?" Qiao Jin shook his head, his expression serious. "I think it's you. If not, please stay away from Qing Luo in future." "Why?" Qiao Jin stared at Dmo Xian as his gaze congealed. "Because she belongs to someone else." Ha ha ha, when Dmo Xian heard that, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. That face that was as handsome as an evil god smiled even more devilishly, shocking everyone. He stretched out his hand and lightly patted Qiao Jin's shoulder. Then, he walked past Qiao Jin and headed straight for the class committee room. Qiao Jin stared at his back for a long time. He retracted his gaze and glanced sideways at his shoulder that had been patted. As expected, it was him. What are you looking at? Let's go. Suddenly, a hand grabbed a strand of Qiao Jin's ink-black hair and tugged it fiercely. What should be confirmed has already been confirmed. The couple has some private things to talk about. Are you going to join in the fun? Qiao Jin felt the pain, and he grabbed the slender wrist of the woman behind him. Yan Xiao Yi, if you want to talk then talk, don't be touchy. Touch you? Bah. I don't want to throw up last night's dinner. Yan Xiao Yi flung his hand away and scoffed. What are you still standing there for? The class monitor is still waiting for you. With that, he turned around and entered the classroom. Qiao Jin opened his eyes wide, displeasure written all over his face. Halt. Tell me clearly, how did I make you want to vomit? We've been classmates for a few years, and now you're saying I'm ugly? Hey. Stop right there. Yi Qing Luo was sitting on the soft chair, pondering over the purpose of Dmo Xian's disguise to enter the Heavenly Academy. Suddenly, his ears twitched. He heard the door of the class committee room being pushed open. A familiar scent wafted into his nose. Yi Qing Luo snorted softly and turned her head away. Little Luo. Dmo Xian strode over, and by the time he stood in front of Yi Qing Luo, his body fell down lazily. Yi Qing Luo was just about to get up and evade. The man seemed to know what she was going to do and quickly grabbed her wrist. The familiar scent of sandalwood instantly enveloped her. The man's burning hot chest was tightly pressed against her delicate body. Yi Qing Luo's heartbeat inexplicably accelerated. Her body temperature seemed to be rising because of the man's embrace. Yi Qing Luo's delicate body trembled slightly as she stretched out her hand to push him away. Dmo Xian had already pressed her down on the soft chair, his arms tightly wrapped around her delicate body. Yi Qing Luo's entire body was almost wrapped up by him. Don't move, let me hug you properly. The deep and husky voice was filled with a seductive meaning, as it slowly seeped into Yi Qing Luo's eardrums, into her heart. The rich sandalwood scent mixed with the man's scent. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered, as the luster in her eyes gradually couldn't be gathered, as she appeared slightly tipsy. Little Luo, I missed you. Chapter 695. It wasn't the first time she heard him saying that he missed her. But every single time, it made her heart beat faster and her cheeks flushed red. This man always used the simplest way to touch her heart. The anger in her heart because of those childish things that Dmo Xian had done in the academy had long disappeared. But her mouth couldn't help but grumble as she raised her fist and pounded it on his chest. Miss me and still bully me. Earlier in the academy, you put on your master's bad character quite excitedly. But just as this fist was about to land on him, Yi Qing Luo stopped. She opened her fingers and directly tore Dmo Xian's robe. How's your injury? Master's robe was rather loose, and with just a few light tugs, a large patch of fair skin was revealed. The injuries earlier had already healed, and there wasn't even a scar. Yi Qing Luo had just heaved a sigh of relief, and before she could say anything, her wrist was suddenly held tightly by Dmo Xian's large palm. She swung her hand but was unable to break free. Raising her eyes to look at Dmo Xian, she met with a pair of eyes which seemed to be flickering with fire. His eyes were spitting fire. The flame wrapped around her, as though it was going to burn her everything. That handsome face, which was like a god, profound and elegant, had an extremely grave expression. Yi Qing Luo was stunned by the fire in his eyes, and seeing his serious expression, her body gradually stiffened. Lil Luo. He opened his mouth and murmured softly. Following that, he lowered his eyes and stared at his half-opened robe before raising his eyes to look at her. Yiqing Luo's face flushed bright red. She pursed her pink lips and stammered, I didn't. Repeatedly forcefully tearing my clothes, Lil Luo or can't wait anymore? Dmo Xian's fingers circled her slender wrist as he gave an extremely pure smile. But the words he said made Yiqing Luo's ears flushed red, unable to refute. Lil Luo don't you know that this kind of action and behavior is sending an invitation to a man? Dmo Xian loved the way her face turned red. The more he teased her, the more he wanted to tease her. Seeing her blush and bashful because of his words, his heart was filled with satisfaction. If you dare to tear my clothes again, don't blame me for retaliating. That demonic voice lingered around her ears, causing Yiqing Luo's body to tremble as though she was struck by lightning. In his mind, he subconsciously imagined the scene of Dmo Xian's counterattack. Instantly, her cheeks flushed red as she buried her head into Dmo Xian's arms. It's over. She, a 21st-century human, was actually teased by an ancient to the point that her face turned red and she was speechless. Wasn't it just driving a car? Her car racing skills were also top-notch. That was what he thought in his heart. But when he raised his head and saw Dmo Xian's smiling peach blossom eyes, the lofty sentiments that he had brewed up with great difficulty were extinguished in an instant. Dmo Xian couldn't help but chuckle, his chest trembling slightly. It shook Yiqing Luo, who was leaning on him, as that electric shock feeling grew stronger. His slender fingers stroked her hair. These days I've been thinking about you all the time. His other arm, the arm which was locked around Yiqing Luo's waist, tightened. His strength was extremely strong, as though he wanted to knead her into his bones and blood. Yiqing Luo was strangled till she couldn't breathe properly, as her nostrils were filled with the sandalwood scent from his body. She shut her eyes, listening to the strong and powerful heartbeat ringing by the side of her ears. Beat by beat, it crashed against her eardrums, striking right into her heart. Dmo Xian wasn't a man who liked to say sweet nothings. He was more inclined to use his actions to express his thoughts. He said it once, thinking of her, and said it for the second time. Chapter 696. Buried in his arms, Yiqing Luo's lips couldn't help but curled upwards, outlining a happy arc. Amen, I missed you too. Gentle words, like a whisper, poured out from Yiqing Luo's mouth. Dmo Xian's body suddenly stiffened. His hand buckled Yiqing Luo's jaw, forcibly lifted her head, his gaze straight into her eyes. Say that again. Yiqing Luo's breathing gradually hastened, curly long eyelashes kept flickering. She wanted to shift her gaze away, but Dmo Xian's fingers were extremely tight, not giving her any chance to escape shyly. Being forced into a helpless situation, Yiqing Luo stared at him angrily, her voice soft. I missed you too. When the last word fell, the man's devilish charming face enlarged rapidly in her pupils. Immediately, the icy cold thin lips had already covered her lips, totally not giving her a chance to resist. The hand that buckled her chin slid into her hair, pressing the back of her head, deepening the kiss. The scorching breath burned between the two of them. With the addition of Dmo Xian, these students who were originally tormented by Yiqing Luo had now become so miserable that they wished they were dead. Dmo Xian's training was superimposed with the mission that Yiqing Luo had handed over. Moreover, the mission that Dmo Xian handed over was not much better than Yiqing Luo. Chasing behind them, not only was there a huge, agile leopard, there was also a dignified nine-tailed fox. Only, everyone was shouting that they were tired, screaming that it was better to die than to live. But every day, the mission that was handed over to them, everyone still gritted their teeth, forcing themselves to complete it. Yiqing Luo was still the same as before, running around the pill refining room, training ground, dormitory, spiritual chi treasured land, these few places. In a flash, another half a month had passed. The two instructors who had applied for sick leave also returned to the academy. The news of Yiqing Luo and the two cold-faced instructors coming to a draw had already spread throughout the entire academy. Back to the academy, it was still inevitable to be chased by the students, asking about the situation that day, and whether Yiqing Luo had the qualifications to enter the class of gods. After all, during this period of time, Yiqing Luo had accepted the challenge from the intermediate profound class 2 class monitor, Xie Yan, to participate in the interclass competition 8 months later. And during this period of time, after being brainwashed by the high profound class and faculty council, these students finally realized that, although tomorrow was the class competition, even if there was only one Yiqing Luo in Devil class, the rest of the trash wouldn't be able to make it far in the interclass competitions. However, the most important thing was that there was a rule in the interclass competition. As long as there was one student left in a certain class, that class would not be completely eliminated. Although it was difficult for Yiqing Luo to fight against 4 hands. But, if they were to lose to Devil class once, how embarrassing would that be? Yiqing Luo represented the Devil class. No matter how the students asked, the cold-faced instructors maintained their cold and aloof attitude. As for the main characters of the students' discussion, no one had seen any trace of them in the past half a month. As a result, while the students were pondering if Yiqing Luo had gone missing, Yiqing Luo was singled out by the director and summoned to the director's office. Yiqing Luo had just returned to the dormitory from the training ground when she saw Yun Xiang and Lu Shuiyu chatting in the dormitory hall. On seeing Yiqing Luo, Yun Xiang stood up and smiled amiably. "Student Yiqing Luo, the director invites you to the director's office." Yiqing Luo nodded her head slightly, as she untied her sweaty hair and returned to her own room, directly leaving Yun Xiang hanging by one side. Chapter 697. Student Yiqing Luo, the director invites you to the director's office. Standing at the door, Yun Xiang repeated once again. There wasn't any sound in the room. It was until Yun Xiang raised his voice, and was about to repeat it for the 3rd time, when he heard a lazy voice coming from inside. "Elder Yun Xiang, I just came back from jogging and I'm covered in sweat. Are you sure you want me to meet the director like this?" Yun Xiang's face flushed red, and after restraining himself for some time, he finally suppressed the anger in his heart. Approximately 1 hour later, Yiqing Luo came out from the room. Looking at the clean and refreshing Yiqing Luo, Yun Xiang was stunned not to say a single word of rebuke. Yiqing Luo didn't continue to make things difficult for him. After all, she still wanted to continue her studies in this academy. It was enough to make the director wait for 1 hour. Immediately, without waiting for Yun Xiang to regain his senses, she directly walked out of the dormitory. Yun Xiang was stunned for a moment and followed closely behind. The two of them came to the director's office, and Yun Xiang went in to report. Although the door of the director's office was soundproof, but Yiqing Luo's ears were extremely sensitive, and she could clearly hear the director's angry voice and the sound of things falling onto the ground. Yiqing Luo's lips twitched in ridicule. Very quickly, Yun Xiang opened the door and gave up his position. "Director asks you to enter." With a smile on his face, his tone was amiable, but his eyes revealed a cold intent, apparently blaming Yiqing Luo for the director's angry rebuke. Yiqing Luo walked into the director's office. The director was sitting at one end of the red sandalwood square table, and on the table was a thick stack of matters which the academy needed to handle. Only the seat in front of him was an empty teapot and a few teacups. In front of Yiqing Luo, there was a broken teacup. Yiqing Luo's vision swept past the broken pieces of the teacup as she raised her brows and looked at the director. The director was still dressed in a greenish-gray robe with an amiable smile hanging on the corners of his lips. No matter how amiable he pretended to be, it was unable to conceal the deep-rooted prestige between his brows. "Student Yi, take a seat here." The director waved his hand, indicating for her to come over. He didn't seem to mind that Yiqing Luo had made him wait for 1 hour. Yiqing Luo nodded and obediently walked over, sitting on the chair on the right side of the director. "Do you know why I invited you to the director's office today?" Director poured a cup of tea and pushed it towards Yi-Ching Luo. Yi-Ching Luo's long curly lashes fluttered slightly, her charming eyes revealed an innocent look as she shook her head. The headmaster smiled. His fingers curled around the teacup and he took a sip. "I have a few questions that I hope student Yi can answer." Yi-Ching Luo pretended to be uneasy as she stood up. "Sir Director, you don't even know, how would I know?" "You must know." The dean squinted his shrewd eyes, reflecting a sharp light. The extremely imposing gaze made Yi-Ching Luo's entire body stiffen as she sat back stiffly. Director saw that his prestige was enough to awe Yi-Ching Luo and his smile deepened in satisfaction. "Regarding the killer infiltrating the academy and assassinating student Yi, does student Yi still remember?" "Of course I remember." Yi-Ching Luo nodded hard. "That time I almost lost my life, how could I not remember?" Then, "Student Yi, do you remember that I asked you something before?" Yi-Ching Luo sat up straight, indicating that she was all ears. Student Ye's ability shouldn't be especially outstanding. Indeed, the last time Yi-Ching Luo was assassinated, she was carried to the director's office and the director intentionally asked her about her ability. Those students who were allocated to the Devil class were the students with the worst aptitude in Heavenly Academy. Yi-Ching Luo nodded. Chapter 698. Indeed, the director suspected her. Yi-Ching Luo was very clear that the director was totally on account of Ghost Doctor's face, harboring his suspicions to keep her. But the director had been suspecting if she had heard the conversation between him and that guardian on the second story of the library pavilion. Indeed, the director had always been suspicious of Yi-Ching Luo. He even arranged for someone to investigate her thoroughly. Yi-Ching Luo, this student, really made one unable to fathom her. From the looks of it, she was obviously a dainty young lady, ignorant of worldly affairs. But every single sentence she said was watertight. There was totally no loophole that could be caught. He who had been in a high position for so many years naturally had his own intuition. This female student always made him feel an inexplicable flustered feeling. Could it be? Just because she was. Suddenly, a piece of token was thrown onto the table. That was Yi-Ching Luo's academy token. The director understood what she meant as he shot a glance at Yi-Ching Luo and stretched out his hand to pick up that wooden token. Yi-Ching Luo's information was clearly printed on the top. The second last row was also clearly marked. Profound grade. Yellow profound 9th grade. The director's eagle eyes constricted as his 5 fingers pinched the wooden token. Yi-Ching Luo knew that the director was testing the authenticity of this wooden token. This wooden token was personally made by the director. Yi-Ching Luo was totally not worried. This wooden token had already been tampered with by DMO Xian. Even if it was the director's test, Yi-Ching Luo wasn't afraid that he would find out anything. As expected, the director released the wooden token and passed it back. "May I ask, Sir Director, in the Heavenly Academy, a yellow profound 9th grade like me, is my ability considered outstanding?" Yi-Ching Luo pinned the wooden token back to her waist as she looked at the director with a beaming smile. Actually, even if Yi-Ching Luo displayed her mystic profound 8th grade power on the surface, in this Heavenly Academy which was full of geniuses, it would at most be considered as above average standard. The director's half-squinted eyes slowly opened. "A yellow profound 9th grade like you can fight to a draw with the 2 instructors. No wonder they want to recommend you to enter the class of gods." Yi-Ching Luo shrugged. "If it's stipulated to use profound chi, I naturally won't be the 2 instructors' match." "Why don't you want to enter the class of gods?" The dean changed the topic. Yi-Ching Luo spread out her hands and blinked her eyes innocently. "I have self-awareness, that kind of place is not suitable for me to go." The dean fell silent. Yi-Ching Luo's skills were indeed much stronger than ordinary students. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to rely on his agility to escape the pursuit of those experienced killers. What astonished the director the most was Yiqing Luo was very intelligent. If a normal student had the chance to enter the class of gods, they would do anything to get it. But Yiqing Luo was very clear about her position. This was what Yiqing Luo meant by knowing one's own limitations. If she, a yellow mystic 9th level student, really entered the class of gods, she would definitely die at the hands of the students in the class of gods. Dean, do you have any other questions? Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as her slender fingers brushed the stray hair by the side of her face. If there's no problem, I'll head back to Master first. Master is still waiting for me on the 2nd level of the library pavilion. Ever since Yiqing Luo became Ghost Doctor's disciple, Yiqing Luo would head over to the 2nd story of the library pavilion almost every day. This caused the entire academy's students to be guessing what was Yiqing Luo's identity. Why were Devil class students able to head over to the 2nd story of the library pavilion without any scruples? To the extent that the faculty council members had reported this to the director, but he didn't have any special expression, apparently approving of Yiqing Luo's action of heading to the 2nd story of the library pavilion. Chapter 699. Hearing Yiqing Luo using Ghost Doctor as a shield, the director's expression sunk instantly. He really didn't understand why the Ghost Doctor, who had never accepted any disciples and only placed all his thoughts on refining pills, would accept Yiqing Luo as his disciple. The director naturally heard the library pavilion administrator mention about Ghost Doctor's protection of Yiqing Luo. Ghost Doctor. Now let them be complacent for a while. When the time comes, no one in this academy would be able to threaten his position. That's right. No one would be able to shake his position in the academy. He would become the real ruler of Heavenly Academy. With this thought in mind, the director's lips revealed a smile again. Student Yi, relax, I have no intention to question you. The person whom Ghost Doctor has his eyes on, naturally wouldn't be that bad. Yiqing Luo's lips still carried a smile. But her heart suddenly sank. Earlier, it was absolutely not an illusion. She saw a strong murderous intent and ambition in the director's eyes. As though, because she mentioned Ghost Doctor? Could it be that the director wanted to kill Ghost Doctor? No, impossible. Unless the director didn't want this academy anymore. One must know that Ghost Doctor was an elder-grade alchemist. A pill refining room that was hard to get even with money. If Ghost Doctor was killed, Heavenly Academy would lose an elder-grade alchemist, and their status would definitely plummet. If the identity of an elder-grade alchemist was revealed, it would be an extremely good advertisement for Heavenly Academy. Otherwise the director wouldn't have painstakingly built an independent alchemist room for Ghost Doctor on the 2nd story of the library pavilion, and even specially opened a secret room for Ghost Doctor. He even put up with Ghost Doctor's weird temper. The director obviously valued Ghost Doctor greatly. It was impossible for him to want to kill Ghost Doctor. Then, the murderous intent in the director's eyes, he wanted to kill her? Student Yi. The director opened his mouth once again, summoning Yiqing Luo's thoughts. She smiled as she looked at the director meekly. The director's smile revealed a sliver of cautiousness. Student Yi, I have a personal question to ask you. When had the high and mighty director ever been so cautious towards a student? Yiqing Luo guessed the director's intention. Indeed, the next second, she heard the director laughing. The main courtyard's evaluator has chosen Devil class to teach. During this period of time, the evaluator and Devil class's students. Did you get along well? This was the main reason why the dean wanted to see her. Other than Yiqing Luo and Old Man Guiyu, even he, the director, was unable to find out which students were in the Devil class. The ones who called out their names. In other words, he was an ordinary freshman who had entered the academy a few years ago. For example, Yan Xiaoyi, Tong Ziqing, and the other students from the big families. Although they had barely passed the entrance examinations, but all of them were timid and weak, and did not have any amazing talents, so after a discussion between the elder quarters and the faculty council, they were directly thrown into the devil class. After that, the academy could no longer find any information on these people. Only the wooden token that represented their identity showed their profound rank. In the past few years, there were only a few people who had advanced a few ranks. The dean was completely disappointed in the students of the devil class. However, the evaluators were determined and wanted to go to the devil class. The director had no right to reject the class selected by the evaluator, so he could only bite the bullet and let Guiyu bring the evaluator to the devil class. He even urged old man Guiyu to persuade the judges to choose another class. But half a month had passed. Not only was there no movement from the devil class, there was no movement from the evaluators too. The evaluators were related to whether the Heavenly Academy would be chosen as the best academy this year, so the director was naturally extremely anxious. He wanted to find old man Guiyu to understand the situation. Unfortunately, old man Guiyu seemed to have disappeared along with the devil class. Chapter 700. Are you referring to Senior Mo? Yiqing Luo scratched her head. We got along well. Senior Mo is very easygoing. Yes, it's Senior Mo. The director's tone was getting more and more nervous. Did he mention when he will leave the devil class? Yiqing Luo shook her head decisively. No, Senior Mo said that he will be staying in the devil class for the next few months. The director's face sunk, closed his eyes and leaned back stiffly on the chair. The next few months. Which meant, Senior Mo was prepared to stay in the devil class until the selection day. That also meant, what Senior Mo saw now, would be the most decadent and trashy place in the Heavenly Academy. How could the Heavenly Academy be selected for this year's Best Academy? It had been sitting on the throne of the Best Academy for 6 consecutive years. The director couldn't take it. The best throne for the past 6 years was snatched away by another academy. Student Yi, how is your relationship with Senior Mo? The director had heard about what happened that day at the freshman training ground. Senior Mo's narration, Instructor Ho and Instructor Chu's narration, as well as the students' discussion. Principal Zhang could roughly imagine what had happened that day. That was Senior Mo. The first time he arrived at the Heavenly Academy, he saw that farce. And because he saw Yiqing Luo and the instructor at the scene, Senior Mo said he wanted to go to the class where Yiqing Luo stayed. It was obvious that this Supreme Mo had taken an interest in Yiqing Luo. If Yiqing Luo helped him to plead, to persuade Senior Mo to go to the High Profound class, perhaps it could change Senior Mo's impression of the Heavenly Academy. When the director asked this question, Yiqing Luo had already guessed his intention. To tell the truth, until now, she still didn't know why Dmo Xian appeared in the Heavenly Academy as Senior Mo. Although Dmo Xian spent most of his time with the students of the devil class. But every night, Yiqing Luo would sneak out of the window after the other dormitory mates had fallen asleep, to cultivate profound qi under Old Man Song's guidance. After that, whether Dmo Xian continued to sleep on her bed or left to do his own things, Yiqing Luo didn't know. Of course, she didn't deliberately ask. If Dmo Xian was going to tell her the purpose of coming to the Heavenly Academy, he would have told her on the first day they met. He naturally had his reasons for not saying it. She only needed to know that no matter what decision Dmo Xian made, he would never harm her or those people whom she cared about, and that was enough. Seeing that Yiqing Luo didn't reply for a long time, the director threw out his bait. Student Yi, Instructor Ho and Instructor Chu have jointly recommended you to enter Class of God. I didn't agree because of your personal reasons. I'm worried that if you enter Class of God, you won't be able to keep up with the other students' progress. He paused, squinted his majestic eyes and continued, if you're willing to convince Supreme Master Mo to teach in the High Profound class, I can let you enter the Class of God and guide you personally to keep up with the progress of the Class of God. This was indeed a great temptation. In the entire Heavenly Academy, There had never been such a case where the dean personally guided them. Not only could he enter the class of gods, but he could also receive personal guidance from the dean. What kind of honor was this? If it were any other student, they would probably be moved to tears and kneel to thank the dean for his kindness. However, Yiqing Luo had no interest in the class of God right from the start. What's more, she didn't have any good impression of the dean. She didn't believe that she would be better off in the class of God. Chapter 701. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up slightly. The long arc at the corner of her eyes was demonic and ostentatious, as though she was attracted by the bait thrown out by the director. Just as the director nodded with a smile, the next second, Yiqing Luo's expression turned vexed. She was extremely vexed as she dropped her arms on her legs and clutched the corner of her clothes. But, I am not familiar with Master Mo, the director's expression froze. Yiqing Luo sighed. I have been learning the ability to differentiate herbs from my master, so I don't have much time to be in the devil class. The director frowned. Isn't devil class going to participate in the interclass competition? Director even knows about this? Yiqing Luo exclaimed in surprise. Her face was filled with surprise. Director indeed cares for students. You even know about the news of devil class participating in the interclass competition. It was obviously a compliment, but no matter how the director heard it, it seemed to be filled with sarcasm. Yiqing Luo didn't give the director any extra time to think as she looked at him helplessly. How about, I go back to devil class to talk to Master Mo? No. Yes. Yes. Every word seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps of his teeth. Go and talk? If he said that, wouldn't it let Master Mo know what he was planning? Yiqing Luo was such an intelligent young lady, how could she not know the consequences? The director's eyes were covered with a layer of coldness as his eagle eyes turned sharp. The more they got to know each other, the deeper the director felt that this female student was getting more and more incomprehensible. She looked delicate and lively, intelligent and moving. But occasionally he felt that she was as dumb as a pig, unable to think straight. Thinking of Yiqing Luo's background, the director's dark eyes deepened. To be able to disguise herself as a waste for the past 15 years and no one found out, it was enough to prove how deep this female student's schemes were. Looks like he had to observe this student more. If his lord's plan was spoiled, not only would he lose his life, the entire Heavenly Academy would be buried along with him. Alright, student Yi, go back first. If you see Master Mo, help me pass a message to invite him to the director's office for a cup of tea. The director waved his hand. Yiqing Luo nodded repeatedly, stood up and asked again, Why don't you let me ask the master if he wants to teach in the high profound class? There's no need. Just pretend that I've never mentioned this matter. Do you understand? The dean waved his hand impatiently and took a sip of tea. Yiqing Luo was helpless. When she walked to the door, she seemed to have thought of something. She stared at the principal with her enchanting eyes and said, Principal, do you have any idea about my assassination attempt? I want to know who it is that has such a deep grudge against me that they want to take my life. And these killers, what methods did they use to enter the Heavenly Academy? She smiled. I suggest the Heavenly Academy to make a comprehensive improvement on the safety of the Academy. The news of me being assassinated in the Academy has spread outside the Academy. If the Heavenly Academy is unable to guarantee the safety of the Academy, it will be listed as a dangerous academy by the headquarters. Saying that, Yiqing Luo didn't bother to look at director's expression as she directly opened the room door and walked out. Yun Xiang staggered and coughed dryly. He straightened his clothes and pretended to be serious. Apparently, he had placed his ear on the door to eavesdrop. Elder Yunxiang, I'll head back to the dormitory first. Yiqing Luo politely greeted Yunxiang and left. Dean, Principal, this. Yunxiang looked at Yiqing Luo's free and easy figure as he walked quickly into the director's office. Director waved his hand as a cold intent flashed past his sharp eagle eyes. Find some people to keep an eye on her and inform me directly if there's any abnormality. Yun Xiang hesitated for a moment. Sir Director, the power behind Yi Qing Luo has too many implications. She seems to be the Overlord's disciple and has some relations with Master Zhu. Keep an eye on her. Chapter 702. Yi Qing Luo didn't return to the dormitory directly, but headed towards the devil class's direction. After passing through a few small paths, they gradually entered a remote road with few people. This was the only way to get to the devil class. Yi Qing Luo's sharp senses told her that there were at least 2 people following her. She didn't need to guess to know. They must have been sent by the director. Had they started to suspect her? Yi Qing Luo snorted coldly. She didn't think that the people following her had the ability to follow her into the devil class. Ever since Dmo Xian was unimpeded, the first and second courtyard's protection was increased by a layer. At the entrance of the second courtyard, there was an enchantment which Dmo Xian had personally set up. Those who weren't from the devil class were unable to enter. Yi Qing Luo had just finished the training tasks assigned by her, and there were more than 10 students swinging their limbs on the training ground. Most of the students had gone to shower and change out of their sweaty uniforms. There was still Dmo Xian's training task at night, so these students were too lazy to change out of their uniforms. Anyway, after the training at night, they would be drenched in sweat once again. On seeing Yi Qing Luo's return, all of them smiled and greeted her. Yi Qing Luo nodded with a smile, and went straight to the class committee room. She didn't see Dmo Xian, nor Long Yunzhan and the rest. They had probably gone to shower and change out of their clothes. The soft chair by the side was separated by Dmo Xian's white robe. Yi Qing Luo walked over and sat down as she leaned her head against the back of the chair. The sandalwood scent on the white robe gradually wrapped around her. Yi Qing Luo felt that her mind was extremely clear as she recalled the conversation with the director earlier in her mind. A person's eyes could best reveal that person's thoughts. The murderous intent and ambition in the director's eyes, as well as that complacent gaze, were all captured by her. Who did the director want to kill in order to achieve his own goal? The only thing she could be sure of now was, the director must have some deal with that so-called lord. The purpose of the deal was most likely to help him achieve his goal. And that lord was most likely related to the disappearance of the student. Her brain kept on working, and the long tensed-up emotions were gradually getting tired. Before she could continue thinking, the sandalwood scent in her nose became more and more intense. After a while, she fell into a deep sleep. By the time Yi Qing Luo woke up, it was already 4 hours later. She wasn't sitting on the soft chair. Instead, he was lying on a makeshift couch in the class committee room. His body was draped in that white robe. Hearing the sound, the man sitting on the other end of the soft chair looked up. "You're awake?" Yi Qing Luo had just woken up and was stunned by her own position. Her charming eyes were covered with a layer of haziness. Her long, curly eyelashes fluttered, and after a long while, her eyes met the man's. Dmo Xian sat lazily at the square table with a stack of survey forms in front of him. Perhaps it was because he had just taken a bath. His hair was as black as smoke, and it was scattered over his shoulders, making him look even more languid. A sparkling and translucent luminous pearl was placed on the square table, making his handsome and devilishly handsome face appear cold and white, giving it a slight coldness. His slender fingers were holding a brush, and he was writing on the questionnaire. As he spoke, his hands did not stop moving. "Why didn't you wake me up when you're back?" Yi Qing Luo lifted her white robe and sat up straight. As he spoke, he could clearly feel the lingering fragrance of sandalwood in his mouth. She realized something and blushed slightly. Chapter 703. Dmo Xian's reaction was swift, and before her fist could land, he grabbed her slender wrist. He put down the brush, turned his head and raised his eyes. Between his deep brows, there was a trace of gentleness. That pair of gleaming peach blossom eyes were like a pool of spring water. Just this gaze was enough to tug at her heartstrings, making her unable to control herself. Yiqing Luo struggled against his hand and said in a bad mood, "Don't think that just because you put on such a handsome face to seduce me, I will take the bait." Dmo Xian's red lips curled upwards as his fingers abruptly withdrew his strength. Yiqing Luo fell right into his arms. Her cheek had just bumped into his hard and hot chest when her eyes were covered by a handsome face. He kissed her lips. Extremely ferocious and overbearing. The fanatical strength made Yiqing Luo unable to withstand it. Their breaths intertwined together, inseparable. Yiqing Luo's petite body trembled slightly as she wanted to struggle but was unable to stop Dmo Xian's passion. She could only allow Dmo Xian's breath to engulf her inch by inch. That kiss was filled with sentiments. Until both of them were out of breath, Yiqing Luo was finally let go. She had no strength left as she laid in Dmo Xian's arms, panting heavily. "What I did to you is this, do you want to relive it again?" She heard his hurried breathing and could obviously feel his body turning stiff. Yiqing Luo's cheeks flushed red as she snorted coldly. But this cold snort was not imposing at all. It was more like a soft whimper. Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as he gazed at the lady in his arms. His ears were so red that water was about to drip out, and the smile and satisfaction in his eyes grew thicker. Usually she looked domineering and powerful, decisive, swift and vicious, the queen. But in front of him, she had a young lady's bashful look. To any man, this was an extremely satisfying thing. Yiqing Luo was shy while Dmo Xian burst out laughing. "This is devil class, don't you dare mess around." Her embarrassment turned into anger. Dmo Xian laughed even more happily as his fingers caressed her swollen pink lips. "What you mean is, if I'm not in devil class, I can mess around? You." Yiqing Luo's cheeks turned even redder. The calluses on the man's fingertips caressed her lips inch by inch, giving her a feeling of being electrocuted. Dmo Xian didn't seem to be bothered by her anger out of humiliation. Instead, he moved closer to her ear and laughed lowly. "Lil Luo, looking at my face, does it feel the thrill of having an affair?" With a swoosh, Yiqing Luo's face was flushed so red that it couldn't get any redder. Damn it! She was always teased by an ancient person until her face turned red. She was rendered speechless before she even started her car. What a shame! Yiqing Luo swore that including her previous life, she had never been so embarrassed. It was all Dmo Xian's fault. Yiqing Luo slapped away the man's arm which was circling around her body and struggled free from his restraints as she stomped her feet and ran out of the class committee room. Even the purpose of coming here had been thrown to the back of his mind. She didn't realize that the moment the class committee room's door was closed, Ji Yunshu's expression changed. The man who was wearing a teasing smile slowly retracted the emotions in his eyes. His expression congealed as his dark eyes stared at the white robe on the soft couch for a long time before he slowly stood up. It didn't take long for him to take out a robe that was similar to this one from within the Netherworld Dragon Ring, and put it on. In front of Yiqing Luo, he had to be extremely careful. Otherwise, based on Lil Luo's intelligence, when she regained consciousness, she would definitely suspect the reason why he was unconscious in the class committee room. He couldn't let Lil Luo take the risk. And he couldn't let Lil Luo have any bit of chance to get hurt. Chapter 704. Yiqing Luo ran out of the class committee room and directly rushed forward. She touched her burning cheeks as her heart was unable to calm down. More than that, there was a sliver of bewilderment. Dmo Xian was like a feather, tickling her heartstrings non-stop. In front of Dmo Xian, she increasingly felt like a little lady. This kind of her, even she herself felt extremely unfamiliar. So unfamiliar that her heart was flustered. She had always been unrestrained and unrestrained. Once as the mistress of the hidden family, she often went on missions for the family, and it wasn't that she had never met any men who were interested in her, or men who were interested in her. But she had never stopped her footsteps for anyone. nor would she disguise or change for anyone. But, in front of Dmo Xian, she had unknowingly become his captive. Was this the feeling of loving someone? The thoughts in her mind kept on churning. Behind her was the sound of a few students conversing. Yiqing Luo was in a daze as she turned her head around and saw a few students walking towards her direction in groups. On seeing Yiqing Luo, the few of them stopped their topic. Madam Qing Luo, where are you going? The few students were stunned as they burst out laughing. Madam Qing Luo, you must be joking. It's already 7 p.m., we're going to the training grounds to train. 7 p.m.? Which was around 7 or 8 in the evening. This time was coincidentally Dmo Xian's training time. Yiqing Luo slapped her forehead fiercely. After being disturbed by Dmo Xian, she almost forgot the reason why she was looking for him. She and the few students arrived at the training grounds, and there were already several tens of students standing there. Not long later, the students were all gathered and lined up properly. After a while, Dmo Xian carried a stack of questionnaires over. When Yiqing Luo saw him, that blush which she had suppressed with great difficulty started to burn again. She shook her head as she took a few steps forward and turned her head around to look at the students who lined up properly. Before today's training, I want to see your real ability. The students were at a loss as they didn't understand Yiqing Luo's meaning. Take off the gravity belts on your arms and legs. Take off all the weight-bearing accessories as well. The students didn't understand why, but towards Yiqing Luo's orders, they had always followed it. When all the weights on their bodies had been removed, their faces were filled with disbelief. Each and every one of them could clearly feel that their bodies had become lighter, as if they could reach a height of 3 feet with a light leap. Furthermore, his speed had also increased by tens or even hundreds of times. What was going on? The students excitedly began to exercise their bodies one by one, and a few students even began to fight on a small scale. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she carefully swept past these students. He was quite satisfied. Ever since she took over the training of these students, they had to wear gravity belts even when they showered. Each of them was carrying a weight of at least 200 jin, and the highest had already reached 450 jin. It was that delicate and pretty youth, Baiming Liancheng. Even Long Yunzhan and the others only carried 150 kilograms of weight. They had to wear these gravity belts and undergo cruel and torturous training every day. They also had to be chased by a leopard and a 9-tailed fox. Over time, these gravity belts on the ground, they were no different from ordinary people. Now that they removed these 200 to 300 kilograms of weight, their bodies naturally felt light, as though they were about to fly into the sky. Not only their speed and body's lightness, their ability and reaction speed would also increase by a huge margin. Chapter 705. That's right, Yiqing Luo had copied Instructor Chu and Instructor Ho's method. This was indeed the fastest way to understand one's own team member's strength. After exchanging blows, one would be able to swiftly know where their weaknesses and strengths were. When the students heard that, they immediately cried out in shock. What the F***k? Had they heard wrongly? They were going against Master Supreme Mo? Wasn't this the same as touching the Tai Sui's head? Plucking the fur from the tiger's mouth? The students' eyes were filled with shock as they looked at Yiqing Luo in fear. They saw Yiqing Luo smiling as she looked at them seriously and nodded. They didn't hear wrongly. Yiqing Luo really wanted them to battle against Master Supreme Mo. The students were so scared that their faces turned pale, as they looked at Dmo Xian, who was holding a warm smile with trepidation. Dmo Xian nodded his head cooperatively. Finished. Would they be able to return alive today? The students had a hopeless expression as they ran towards Long Yunzhan's direction and pleaded, Class Monitor. Class Monitor. It's better for you to train us. This is simply asking for our little lives. Long Yunzhan was expressionless. I will also take part in the battle. The implication was that none of the students in Devil class would be spared. The students were wailing incessantly. Xiao Jin revealed a rare serious expression as he threw the gold coin dart in his hand into the sky and caught it. Class monitor might not lose to Master Supreme Mo even if he takes action. Moreover, if you carry the mentality that you will definitely lose against Master Supreme Mo, then the battle which Qing Luo arranged will lose its original meaning. The students who were wailing in pain suddenly stopped. Do you know how many people in the world want to cross hands with Master Supreme Mo? Yiqing Luo gave a faint laugh as her cold eyes flashed with a biting cold glint. Master Supreme Mo is one of the 10 great elders in the main courtyard. Not only is he the youngest elder in the main courtyard, he is also one of the best among the elders. She repeated the information of Mo Xian, who was disguised as Master Supreme Mo word by word. In the hearts of Devil Class's students, Yiqing Luo had long become their center. Now that they heard Yiqing Luo's cold tone, all of them felt their hearts thumping as they knew that she was angry. Now that Yiqing Luo was speaking, no one dared to make a sound. Even his breathing was very careful. It is your honor to be able to fight with Senior Master Mo. To be able to receive guidance from Senior Master Mo, it can be said that it is a blessing that you have cultivated in your past lives. The students lowered their heads in shame. Yiqing Luo had no intention to blame them. After all, these youths were still young. He didn't think too much about it. Just like when Instructor Chu and Instructor, he asked the freshmen to challenge them, those freshmen were also in fear, for fear of offending the instructors. But they had never thought about it. As the elders, they were responsible for guiding the students. The person who proposed this condition would definitely be of help to them. Even if there was no help. If he could fight against such a powerful person, he would also be able to discover his own shortcomings. What was there to be afraid of? She just had a kind of resentment towards iron for not becoming steel. She hoped that these students could become useful people with her help. These students were her team, her companions. Yiqing Luo didn't have the leisure to bother about those freshman training grounds thoughts. Facing her team, her partners, Yiqing Luo was willing to tell all the principles that she knew to these partners. Chapter 706. Yiqing Luo's voice was sonorous and forceful. Every word and sentence was like a stone falling into their hearts, causing ripples to ripple in their hearts. One after another young faces at this instance turned grave. Those who had not matured yet at this instance straightened their backs. Their eyes sparkled with an unwavering conviction. From the moment you stood on the training ground, everything that you have done is to fight for yourself. Next is to fight for your brothers, to fight for the class. If you don't even have the courage to fight for yourself, to not get back that dignity which you have lost, then you don't have the right to stand on the training ground. Even if you force yourself to stand here, you will not be able to become the strong, and will forever be the weaklings on the training ground. The youngsters' mouths exploded with a low roar. We are not weaklings. I want to be the strong. Very good. Those who want to be the strong, do you know what to do next? Yiqing Luo nodded her head satisfactorily. Her cold voice was extremely dignified. Simple words could easily shake one's heart. These youngsters who had been inspired, their eyes were filled with the luster of hope. They clenched their fists tightly, as one by one, they lined up into a line, as they cupped their fists towards Mo Xian's direction. Master Supreme Mo, sorry for offending you. Master Supreme Mo smiled, as he took a step back, leaving some space. Come on. The leading student excitedly rushed up. At this moment, Yiqing Luo's pearl-like voice was heard from outside the students. During this period of time, you can use all your skills, using any methods, even dirty tricks. As long as you are able to fight to a draw with Master Supreme Mo, then this training will be considered as the end. The leading student's footsteps halted as he turned his head, which means, we can gang fight? Yiqing Luo's smile was like a flower as she nodded, that's right. Her words had just ended, those 60 over students, as though flocked, as they charged towards Mo Xian's direction. Xiao Jin was convulsing with laughter by the side. Qing Luo's move is simply too vicious. No matter how strong Master Supreme Mo is, it will be hard for him to fight against 60 over students in a continuous battle. Yan Xiaoyi heaved a sigh of relief. Luckily this time, the ones who made the students gang up on him is not us. The rest of them nodded in agreement. Ever since they had Supreme Mo and Old Man Guiyu, they didn't have to worry much. All they had to do was train with the students every day. Even the dangerous task of being surrounded and attacked by the cannons was taken over by Supreme Mo. The students' excitement gradually turned into frustration after they fell to the ground one by one. More than 60 people ganged up on him. In the end, before they could even touch the corner of Supreme Teacher Mo's clothes, they were thrown to the ground. Even if they fell onto the ground, without Yiqing Luo's shout to stop, they had to bear with the pain and stand up, continuing to charge towards where Supreme Mo was. These students didn't know how many times they had stood up, stumbled, stood up, stumbled, and repeated these actions over and over again. It was until they were covered with cuts and bruises, unable to stand up any longer when Yiqing Luo finally shouted for them to stop. She looked at the sweaty students lying on the ground, and her lips curled into a smile of admiration. Very good, all of you are great. Indeed, it was great. No matter how bitter and tired they were, even if they fell to the ground and could not get up, no one complained about being tired or bitter. These students went into a slight daze. To be able to get a compliment from Yiqing Luo, even if they were already exhausted, they couldn't help but laugh out loud. Sounds of laughter from the young men and young ladies drifted across the entire training ground. Chapter 707. Yiqing Luo walked to Di Mo Xian's side and handed over the cup and handkerchief. Thanks for your hard work, Master Mo. Di Mo Xian received the cup and glanced at the handkerchief as his lips curled into a teasing smile as he leaned close to her ear and lowered his voice. I've been used by you for so long, look at the sweat on my head, aren't you going to wipe it off personally? In front of the students, he dared to take liberties with her so openly? Didn't he want to hide his identity? She had already suffered several losses from Di Mo Xian's mouth. Still wanted to continue taking liberties with her? She wanted to see who was the one taking liberties with who. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath as her lips curled into a charming smile as she clenched the handkerchief tightly and pressed it on his forehead. Thank you, Master Mo, for your cooperation. As a member of the class committee, I represent the entire class to thank you. Thank Mo. Zun. Fu. Zi. The last sentence was almost spat out one word at a time. That handkerchief which was pressed on Di Mo Xian's forehead also secretly increased her strength. The strength of her fingertips was definitely not small. Di Mo Xian's face, which could almost be passed off as genuine, had traces of red. However, Di Mo Xian, that fellow, still smiled without any change in expression. Thank you for the late student Yiqing Luo's concern. I will remember your gratitude. Yiqing Luo's cheeks suddenly turned red. Her fingers were almost trembling. The so-called gratitude, Yiqing Luo naturally understood what it meant. This was also a joke that Di Mo Xian often played recently. He always used gratitude and rewards as a request, asking for a kiss from Yiqing Luo. This was her gratitude towards Di Mo Xian. If Yiqing Luo didn't agree, she would eventually be subdued into Di Mo Xian's arms, forced and half-heartedly handed over her gratitude gift. Today, Di Mo Xian was besieged by 60 over students, which gave Di Mo Xian an excuse to ask for a gratitude gift. Just as the two of them were exchanging glances, suddenly a figure appeared behind Di Mo Xian. Master Mo, don't forget, there are still members of the class committee who have not participated in the challenge. The icy cold voice had no fluctuation of emotions. Long Yunzhan stood there. His azure blue eyes were cold and heavy. His brows creased slightly as he stared coldly at Di Mo Xian. Supreme Master Mo, allow me to challenge you. Jin Zi. Class monitor, Is he crazy? Yan Xiaoyi was stunned. Weren't they not planning to go on stage? What was Long Yunjian doing? He actually took the initiative to challenge Teacher Supreme Mo. No matter how strong the class monitor was, these 60 students who were working together to challenge Mo Xian were not able to hurt him in the slightest. Could Long Yunjian defeat Supreme Mo? Qiao Jin's brows furrowed. His gaze staring at Long Yunjian had an additional trace of worry. As expected, with regards to Yi Qing Luo's matters, Long Yunjian was unable to maintain his usual calmness. Let him fight. After thinking for a while, Qiao Jin sighed. When it came to matters of the heart, it was useless no matter what outsiders said. Long Yunjian was very clear that Yi Qing Luo would only mention his brother. However, he just couldn't get out of this place. Forget it, I'll just let him fight with Di Zun. Perhaps Long Yunjian would give up. If he loses, will he? He won't. Not knowing when, Yi Qing Luo had already handed over the battlefield to those two men, as she came to the side of Qiao Jin and the others. Chapter 708. But Class Monitor is the undefeatable legend in the students' hearts. Tong Ziqing pursed her red lips as her eyes were filled with worry. Yi Qing Luo placed her hand on Tong Ziqing's shoulder as she gave a teasing smile. That's the undefeatable legend in your heart, right? You. Tong Ziqing's cold and elegant face instantly flushed a shade of red. She stared at Yi Qing Luo resentfully as she struggled to break free from Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes flickered as she gave a teasing smile. Could it be that Class Monitor has lost, so he's not the undefeatable legend in your heart? Of course he is. Without any hesitation, Tong Ziqing hurriedly replied as she blurted it out. Realizing that she had been tricked by Yi Qing Luo, Tong Ziqing's cheeks turned even redder. Especially noticing that the others' gazes were all concentrated on her, Tong Ziqing instantly flew into a rage out of humiliation. What are you all looking at? Aren't you all worried for the Class Monitor? Qiao Jin gave a devilish smile as he decisively shook his head. Not worried. Yan Xiaoyi also shook her head. Not worried. Mo Yuying's eyes widened as her tender red lips slowly spat out a word. No. You all did it on purpose. Tong Ziqing's face was extremely red. She had always been walking on the noble and aloof route, and after being teased by Yi Qing Luo today, her noble and aloof image was completely destroyed. Yi Qing Luo spread out her hands as she innocently blinked her eyes. Yes, 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 I intentionally let Class Monitor become the undefeatable legend in your heart. I intentionally made you worry for Class Monitor. When she said that, Qiao Jin and Yan Xiaoyi couldn't help but burst out into laughter. Even Mo Yeying's stiff, puppet-like lips pulled up into an extremely shallow arc. Yi Qing Luo. Tong Ziqing completely went berserk as she gritted her teeth as she bellowed out Yi Qing Luo's name word by word. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she nodded, indicating that she was right here, so Tong Ziqing didn't need to bellow so loudly. Following that, her gaze returned back to those two men who were still looking at each other, finally stopping on Mo Xian as her gaze turned slightly gentle. Actually, there's no need to worry at all. One is the belief of the Devil class students, and the other is the strongest and youngest Supreme Teacher Mo from the headquarters. No matter who wins or loses, their strength has long been engraved in our hearts, isn't it? Tong Ziqing calmed down. Her beautiful eyes stared at Long Yunjian. She stared at his extraordinarily handsome, yet ice-cold face. Her red lips curled up slightly as she lightly nodded. Whether they won or lost, it would not affect their position in his heart. Devil Class's Class Monitor, are you sure you want to battle alone? Mo Xian's smile was warm, but it was filled with a sense of evil. Long Yunjian's expression was cold. One person is enough. Mo Xian squinted his long and narrow peach blossom eyes, and that curved arc was rippling with light. He was laughing, as if he was laughing at Long Yunjian for overestimating himself. However, upon closer inspection, it seemed to be an ordinary smile. A glint flashed past Long Yunjian's icy cold eyes as he suppressed his anger. Cut the crap, let's do it. Saying that, Long Yunjan's figure moved as his hands and feet speedily attacked towards Demo Xian's direction. His attack was swift and fierce. He totally didn't show any mercy or had the intention to probe. The first move was a fatal killer move. This was also Long Yunjan's habit. To subdue the enemy, it required speed and power. The more time was dragged, the more opportunities the opponent would have. A loud bang was heard as Long Yunjan's first attack directly crashed onto the ground. Chapter 709. The surrounding students started to cry out in shock. They wanted to open their mouths to stop Long Yunjan, but when they saw that frosty face, no one dared to say a word. Looking at the ground which was filled with gravel and the ground which was smashed into pieces, the students' hearts twitched. Class monitor, wasn't this battle a little too serious? This was our training ground. Such a vicious battle, so vicious that the ground was smashed. How were they going to train in future? Long Yunjan's vicious attack made Demo Xian's brows raise slightly. Class monitor seems to have some deep enmity with me? Didn't Qing Luo say to use all your skills? Long Yunjan replied icily. His first move didn't succeed, and Long Yunjan's palms moved as profound qi burst out from his body, and his 5 fingers turned into eagle claws, striking towards Demo Xian's neck once again. Class monitor seems to have comprehended student Yi Qing Luo's words. Demo Xian's long and narrow peach blossom eyes outlined a curved arc, looking even more devilish and arrogant. He flicked out his fingers and his fingertips easily locked onto Long Yunjan's fingers. Following that, his fingertips exerted a little force as he locked onto Long Yunjan's arm, and with a gentle flip, he flipped Long Yunjan over, pressing down on his arm. Your class monitor has set an extremely good example for all of you. When you're battling, no matter who the opponent says, don't treat it as a competition, but bring out your most vicious moves. You can treat your opponent as the person who killed your father, or as the person you hate the most. You can even treat him as the person you hate the most. The students were all astonished. Apparently, Long Yunjan wasn't Master Supreme Mo's opponent. Master Supreme Mo didn't even need to use his full strength and could easily subdue Long Yunjan. And he could even joyfully and easily use this opportunity to give them some guidance. The students didn't think that their class monitor's ability had regressed. On the contrary, they believed in their class monitor's ability. This could only prove one thing. Master Supreme Mo's ability was extremely powerful. No wonder he was able to become one of the 10 great elders in the main courtyard, and he was one of the best among the elders. No wonder Madame Qing Luo said that to be able to battle with such a powerful person was their good fortune from their past lives. It was simply their honor. Just as they were speaking, the sleeves of Long Yunjan, who was originally held in Demo Xian's hands, fluttered as rays of light flashed. Long Yunjan's wrist flipped lightly, a dagger unknowingly appeared in his hand. Long Yunjan's reaction was extremely fast. After struggling free from Demo Xian, she flipped over and stabbed the dagger in her hand directly towards Demo Xian's chest. Seeing that this dagger was about to touch Demo Xian, however, the white figure quickly retreated and disappeared from everyone's sight in the blink of an eye. The students' eyes widened in disbelief as they looked around for Demo Xian's figure, only to see Demo Xian appearing behind Long Yunjan. His jade-like white robe fluttered in the strong wind. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his handsome and devilish face was like that of a god. Long Yunjan swiftly rolled forward on the ground, avoiding Demo Xian's attack range, and immediately wielding his dagger, he attacked Demo Xian once again. His attacks did not stop. Moreover, it was getting sharper and faster. Not knowing if it was because Long Yunjan's fighting spirit had been aroused, causing his attacks to turn ferocious, or if Demo Xian was intentionally going easy on him. The two of them fought for exactly 1 hour, but there wasn't any winner or loser. The rhythm was controlled extremely well as usual. Both of them, no one gained the upper hand. This battle made everyone recall some time ago, Yi Qing Luo's battle with the two instructors. Chapter 7:10. Yi Qing Luo shook her head helplessly. That would depend on their mood. Generally speaking, a battle between men would not end until one side was dead. Especially since these two obviously had no intention of ending. Yi Qing Luo was absolutely assured of Dmo Xian's ability. The Overlord's reputation wasn't just for show. As for Long Yunzhan, to be able to become Devil Class's class monitor and train these originally waste students to such a stage. Naturally, he had the absolute ability. Looking at the way these two were fighting, it was as though the other party was her father's murderer, fierce and sharp. Unless she stopped herself, otherwise even if she went in to stop them, she might be sent flying. But what made Yi Qing Luo curious was Long Yunzhan's ability. Actually, ever since she entered Devil Class, Yi Qing Luo had never seen Long Yunzhan's ability. She had challenged Long Yunzhan before, but Long Yunzhan had rejected her. Even in the Magic Beast Forest, against that 7th-level high-leveled Mirage Beast Child Een, Long Yunzhan didn't use his full strength. Today she saw Long Yunzhan's skills, and the profound grade which she couldn't see through. It showed that Long Yunzhan's ability had already exceeded her imagination. The training ground had already been shattered to the point where no one could stand. The two of them were still exchanging blows. The other students were totally unable to tell the trajectory of their battle. They could only see the two of them moving like lightning, dodging left and right, like two graceful birds, leaving behind a trail of remnant shadows. Who do you think is more powerful? Yan Xiaoyi naturally could see their actions and her slender brows creased slightly, her eyes filled with worry. In fact, everyone was well aware of this answer. What Yan Xiaoyi really wanted to ask was, when would Supreme Master Mo stop? But asking this would probably hurt Long Yunzhan's pride. If this battle carried on for such a long time, even if this Devil Class courtyard had already been sealed by Master Mo using an array. But there was no guarantee that in such an intense battle, their profound qi would not overflow the barrier. Once the Academy's equipment detected this trace of profound qi, Devil Class's secret would not be able to be kept. Class Monitor is not Master Mo's opponent. Yi Qing Luo replied straightforwardly as she narrowed her eyes and turned towards the students behind her. What do you all think? The students had not expected Yi Qing Luo to throw this question to them. How were they supposed to answer this? If he replied that Long Yunzhan was formidable, wouldn't he be offending Supreme Teacher Mo? Furthermore, Supreme Master Mo was so powerful. Even if they told him, they would feel guilty. If they replied that Teacher Mo was powerful, wouldn't that go against the beliefs in their hearts? The class monitor would also have a knot in his heart. Just as the students were feeling extremely conflicted, they heard Yi Qing Luo continuing to ask, "Do you think they're powerful?" The students' eyes lit up. This question was easy to answer. Amazing! Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled up as she crossed her arms in front of her chest, looking at these students behind her. Then do you know that there are many people who are more powerful than them in the world? The student's bright eyes immediately dimmed. He didn't quite understand the meaning behind Yi Qing Luo's words. I only hope that you know there's always someone better than you out there. The so-called amazing in your eyes is really amazing, but in actual fact, there are many more people who are more powerful than what you see. Initially, Yi Qing Luo had not thought of making use of this opportunity to tell everyone about the logic of, basically everyone would make mistakes. Chapter 7:11. If it was her, would she be able to receive one move from Dmo Xian? Or, could she receive one move from Long Yunzhan? The answer was, she wasn't confident. These two people's abilities, no matter if it was Dmo Xian or Long Yunzhan, she wasn't their match. Just like what she said. There was always someone better than her in this world. There was still a lot of room for her to improve. This was how she felt right now. Hence, she passed on her feelings to the student. Self-righteousness was a common problem that all humans basically had. especially these young men and young ladies. After being oppressed, receiving guidance and successfully surpassing those who had bullied them, they would probably be conceited, complacent. Always felt that the current her was extremely powerful. Always felt that depending on herself, she might be able to fight her way out. Always felt that there were only a few people who were more powerful than herself in this world. Always felt that no one was perfect. These students in the devil class also had this common problem. Otherwise they wouldn't have formed a small team back then, and wouldn't have bullied Ni Ruapan, who was the most trash in the class. Even now, these students still had this kind of illness. Her words ended here. Whether they could be enlightened or not would depend on whether these students remembered what she said in their hearts. Still want to fight? Dmo Xian also heard what Yiqing Luo said to the student. He squinted his devilish eyes as his lips curled into a slight arc. It wasn't ridicule, nor was it banter, but a very natural smile. But this smile, in Long Yunzhan's eyes, was like a needle prick. His expressionless face sunk slightly, as his pair of frosty eyes seemed to have frozen into ice. Even if I can't beat you now, sooner or later, I will defeat you personally. Long Yunzhan clenched his fist tightly, as he swung it towards Dmo Xian's face. He was very clear that he wasn't Dmo Xian's match. But on seeing Dmo Xian smile, he wasn't willing to give up just like that. Even though he knew that Dmo Xian had intentionally held back, and didn't use his full strength to fight with him. Especially when Yiqing Luo mentioned that she wasn't Dmo Xian's match, that string in his heart broke. This punch carried his unwillingness, as well as a faint jealousy that even he himself wasn't sure about. However, Dmo Xian blocked his attack once again. Dmo Xian clenched his fists tightly as his body suddenly leaned forward. The two of them were getting closer and closer. He heard Dmo Xian chuckling beside his ear. Long Yunzhan, no matter how long it takes, you will never be my match. Strength is one, and so is little Luo. Long Yunzhan's body suddenly stiffened. His usually emotionless eyes were suddenly filled with panic. He took a few steps back guiltily, and did not even have the courage to look at Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian knew? She knew the deepest secret in his heart? Knew of his feelings for Yiqing Luo? No wonder Dmo Xian had been intentionally letting him off, intentionally tangling with him for such a long time. Dmo Xian did this on purpose. He intentionally wanted to use this matter to declare his ownership of Yiqing Luo. Long Yunzhan's heart skipped a beat. He turned around and disappeared from the training ground in the blink of an eye. After a moment of deathly silence, the surroundings fell into a deathly silence. Tong Ziqing's eyes were filled with worry as she wanted to chase up to him, but she didn't know where Long Yunzhan had disappeared to. Looking at the composed Yiqing Luo, she pursed her red lips as she asked apprehensively, "Class monitor, he..." Chapter 7:12. How could we lose our face? Tong Ziqing bit her lower lip as she anxiously shouted, "We are all clear of Master Mo's ability." 60 overbrothers besieged him, and yet they weren't even able to touch Master Mo's sleeves. Sir Class Monitor had fought with Master Mo for more than 1 hour, which is enough to prove his ability. She purposely said these words for the other students to hear. All along, Long Yunzhan was the class students' belief. He was the deity who saved them from the abyss of suffering. Tong Ziqing didn't wish for any students to have a change of view towards Long Yunzhan because of this failure. Right. That's right. We are clearer than anyone else about Sir Class Monitor's ability. Sir Class Monitor had taught us for so many years and none of us are his opponent. How could we possibly not believe in his ability? Sir Qing Luo said before, there's always someone better than you out there. There are many people who are more powerful than Sir Class Monitor, and there are also people who are more powerful than Master Mo. Not everyone is an undefeatable legend forever. No matter what, Sir Class Monitor will always be Sir Class Monitor. The young lad's sonorous and forceful voices declared their true feelings right now. Tong Ziqing's slender fingers curled up tightly. Looking at the student's serious expressions, her cold and elegant face revealed some gentleness as her beautiful eyes revealed some sparkles. Suddenly, Yiqing Luo placed one hand on her slender shoulder. Ziqing, this is a rare opportunity, don't miss it. Tong Ziqing heard her words and turned her head over unknowingly. She saw Yiqing Luo smiling coquettishly as she placed something in her hand. Following that, she leaned close to her ear and lowered her voice. The direction where he disappeared is the direction of the academy. Tong Ziqing was stunned again as she quickly understood the meaning behind Yiqing Luo's words. Her delicate face blushed slightly as she lowered her head to look at the thing in her palm. That was something which looked like a seashell. This was a seashell which was used to store sound. Of course, the stored words were not more than 10 sentences. Tong Ziqing didn't need to think to know that this seashell, which was used to store sounds, should be the words which the students trusted Long Yunzhan. She clenched the shell tightly in her palm and thanked Yiqing Luo before speedily heading towards the direction of the academy. The fact that Tong Ziqing was in love with Long Yunzhan was known to all the students in the devil class. Seeing Tong Ziqing leave without looking back, he naturally knew what she was going to do. The solemn atmosphere just now suddenly exploded like a pot. The students raised their arms and cheered behind her. Goddess Ziqing, you can do it! Go, Goddess Ziqing! We all support you! It was not until Tong Ziqing's figure disappeared from everyone's sight that they finally stopped talking. Yiqing Luo clapped her hands and indicated for them to look over. All right, after the battle between you and Supreme Master Mo, in view of your poor performance, in future Master Mo's lessons will be extended by 2 hours. The students who were originally excited immediately had bitter expressions on their faces. What a small mood! Can't you let people be happy from top to bottom? Of course, even though they were grumbling, these students were still very willing to extend the teaching time. Just like what Yiqing Luo had said, this was not only for honor for the class but more importantly for himself. Only when he became stronger would he have the qualification and ability to protect the others. Looking at the student's eyes which were overflowing with radiance, Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled up in gratification. She believed that those who were willing to put in the hard work would definitely be rewarded. Chapter 7:13. Training time always passed by very quickly. In a flash, it was the end of every month's 3-day holiday. Yiqing Luo naturally gave them half a day of holiday to spend time with their families. The remaining 3 days were completely dedicated to the World Mercenary Group. During this period of time, their days were extremely tough, but their hearts were all satisfied. The moment the holiday arrived, the students were all excited. All of them wanted to give it a try. They wanted to take on missions and test their true strength. During this period of time, many things happened in the academy. For example, Yiqing Luo was later invited to the director's office. Naturally, on the surface, she was still inquiring about Supreme Mo. Yiqing Luo brushed it off. The director asked a few more questions, for example the results of Yiqing Luo and Ghost Doctor's pill refining skills etc. Yiqing Luo knew that the director intentionally sent someone to keep an eye on her. During this period of time, he had purposely appeared in the devil class and the library pavilion. Naturally she gave a half-truth and half-lies. When Dmo Xian heard Yiqing Luo's grumbles, he also appeared to chat with the director. He simply decided to stay in devil class. The director couldn't offend the main courtyard's master, so he could only let him be. For example, after the battle between Long Yunzhan and Dmo Xian, Long Yunzhan never appeared in devil class again. And Tong Ziqing. Yiqing Luo met Long Yunzhan at another ectoplasm treasure land. But before she could open her mouth, that pair of azure blue eyes flashed past a fluster as he disappeared from the ectoplasm treasure land. Obviously, Tong Ziqing didn't follow by his side. That day, after Tong Ziqing went to look for Long Yunzhan, what happened? to the extent that one or two of them didn't want to appear in front of everyone. Yiqing Luo thought of asking them clearly. But Xiao Jin and the others searched everywhere they could possibly go, but there were no traces of them. All the way till the holiday, the two of them still didn't appear. On the day of the holiday, Yiqing Luo met with Yi Fengyu. Not seeing him for a month, this brother of hers had grown taller by quite a bit. Now he was already half a head taller than her. And he had become more muscular. Yiqing Luo placed her hand over and could feel the distinct lines of muscles. What made Yiqing Luo even more surprised was Yi Fengyu's profound grade had advanced. Now, he was already a mystic profound rank 5 profound practitioner. Yiqing Luo heavily patted Yi Fengyu's shoulder. "Little you, not bad, not bad. Work hard." Yi Fengyu, who was carrying his luggage, scratched the back of his head shyly. "Master has taught me well, and Brother Ziffan has helped me a lot." Mu Zifan? He actually came to the academy? Yiqing Luo had also heard about the 2 months in the academy. The Mu brothers of High Profound Class 2 were different from ordinary students. They did not need to cut off all contact with the outside world and had to stay in school for an entire month. They were free to apply to leave or enter the academy. After all, the Mu family only had 2 brothers. All the major medicine shops under the Mu family must be managed by someone. Mu Zi insisted on managing the Mu family's business. As for Mu Zifan, as the young master of the Alchemy Guild, there were many matters that required his attention. They did not graduate from the Heavenly Academy. On the Academy's side, they also needed the Mu brothers to be the Academy's advertisement. Naturally, they could accommodate the Mu brothers and give them special privileges. Ever since Mu Zifan became the Alchemy Guild's young union master, the Mu brothers would only come to the academy for 2 or 3 days a month. This was also the reason why the Mu brothers caused an uproar when the freshmen entered the academy. Unexpectedly, the Mu brothers actually came to the academy this month. Chapter 7:14. It's okay, sister. I've already explained it to Brother Ziffan. Seeing Yiqing Luo's expression, Yi Fengyu guessed what she was thinking about. The Mu brothers had indeed come to the academy this month to look for Yiqing Luo. Mu Zifan first looked for Yi Fengyu. From Yi Fengyu's mouth, he found out that Yiqing Luo had been busy between Devil Class and the library pavilion. Yi Fengyu had tried to bump into Yiqing Luo at the canteen several times, but he didn't see her at all. Following that, they heard the news of Yiqing Luo and the cold-faced instructor coming to a draw. Yi Fengyu guessed that his sister was busy. Then, he told Mu Zifan about it. Once he heard about the library pavilion, Mu Zifan immediately understood something. He only asked Yi Fengyu not to disturb Yiqing Luo, and came to the academy from time to synthesize old man Gui Yu's guidance and give him some constructive suggestions. Yiqing Luo nodded her head. It seemed that she owed the Mu brothers even more. "Oh right, big sister, Brother Zifan wanted me to ask you if you're interested in participating in the Alchemy Union's alchemy competition." Yi Fengyu had been thinking about the task Mu Zifan had given him. A competition between alchemists? Yiqing Luo raised her brows in puzzlement as she was puzzled. Yi Fengyu shook his head. "I don't know either. Brother Zifan only said that the Alchemy Union has sent out invitations to alchemists from all over the Nirvana realm. If you participate in the Alchemy Union's alchemy competition, you will be able to obtain a legendary alchemy cauldron as well as many rare medicinal ingredients. Brother Ziffan said that if you agree, he will help you apply for leave to go to the Alchemy Union to compete." The so-called alchemist competition was probably to inject more fresh blood into the Alchemist Union. But it was true. Being an alchemist required a lot of time, money, and effort. If he had talent in alchemy, then joining the Alchemy Union would be a good choice. At least in terms of medicinal herbs and money, he didn't need to worry too much. Of course, the prerequisite was that one had to have talent in alchemy. He recalled the Alchemist Guild's command medallion that Mu Zifan had given him when they had first met. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips and immediately nodded. I'll go and have a chat with Zifan. Actually, Yiqing Luo wasn't particularly interested in the alchemist competition. Medicinal cauldron? She had the divine dragon medicine cauldron, so she did not need the other medicine cauldrons. However, she was a little interested in those rare medicinal herbs. Moreover, she owed the Mu brothers a lot of favors. If he refused Mu Zifan's invitation again, it would seem unreasonable. Yi Fengyu heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Mu Zifan had completed his task. The two of them walked out of the academy's gate one after the other. Outside the door, he bumped into Ling Fengying and Yiqing Jian, who were displaying their affection wantonly. Yiqing Jian was currently dressed in a purple rose-colored muslin long dress with a similar colored muslin draped over it, looking extremely gorgeous. Her exquisite hair was adorned with all kinds of jingling jewelry. She still looked elegant and dignified. Whereas Ling Fengying was the same as 1 month ago when he sent Yiqing Jian to the academy, welcoming her. On seeing Yiqing Luo, Yiqing Jian gave a noble harumph as her vision shot towards Ling Fengying, who had been staring at Yiqing Luo. Second prince, that slut, what's there to look at? Ling Fengying retracted his vision and retracted the deep meaning in his eyes as he gave a warm smile. Qing Qian, get on the carriage. This prince has already arranged a sumptuous lunch in the palace. His voice wasn't loud, but it absolutely wasn't soft either. When the surrounding students heard that, they all cupped their faces as they cried out in envy. Ling Fengying's words successfully pleased Yiqing Jian. Chapter 7:15. In the midst of these ladies' screams, Yiqing Luo's expression didn't change at all, as though Yiqing Qian to her was just an unimportant person. She didn't even have the mood to gossip. However, Yi Fengyu was extremely displeased. Yiqing Qian, as the eldest sister, not to mention snatching her sister's fiancé, she didn't even have any intention to repent. After secretly seducing Ling Fenghua, he seduced the second prince. How could he have such a fickle elder sister? The more he thought about it, the more he disliked her. Even the way he looked at Ling Fengying was filled with hatred. Eighth brother. Suddenly, Yiqing Jian, who had just entered the carriage, lifted the curtains with her jade fingers. Her gaze was like a poisonous snake, entangling towards Yi Fengyu's direction. She lowered her body, and the long pendants in her hair clanked against each other. Everyone's vision immediately followed Yiqing Qian's line of sight and looked towards Yi Fengyu's direction. Yi Fengyu was stunned. Yiqing Qian curled her red lips and raised her chin arrogantly. Eighth brother's eyes seemed to be filled with dissatisfaction towards me. Yi Fengyu's face paled. He had totally not expected Yiqing Qian to directly accuse him of not liking her in front of so many people. After all, they still had the Three Springs sex reputation on their shoulders. Even if they didn't get along, they wouldn't put all their disputes in the open in the eyes of outsiders. But Yiqing Qian said it out directly. The current Yiqing Qian really wasn't like the past her. It was as if he had completely thrown off all restraints and did not care about anything. For a woman with a twisted human nature, degenerate morals and shameless, do you still need to welcome her with a smile? Yiqing Luo took a step forward, shielding her brother behind her. She indeed didn't want to waste time with Yiqing Qian. Perhaps Ling Fengying had said something to Yiqing Qian and recently, Yiqing Qian didn't find trouble with her. But what Yiqing Qian shouldn't have done was to use him as an example. If she wanted to use Yi Fengyu to stir up trouble and scold the locust while pointing at the mulberry, that would depend on whether she was willing or not. Yiqing Luo's abusive words didn't arouse Yiqing Jian's emotions at all. Yiqing Qian had heard more than enough nasty words during this period of time. So what if I scold him? He still couldn't do anything to her, could he? She was still the object of envy in everyone's eyes. She was still in a high and mighty position, and many people were still afraid of her. Seventh sister, how much nobler are you compared to me? Yiqing Qian covered her mouth and chuckled softly. Her pair of arrogant and beautiful eyes curled into a mocking smile. Didn't you also cling onto His Majesty for the sake of status? For the sake of eighth younger brother, you can even accept teacher Guiyu. Also, that day at the Heavenly Fortune Inn, weren't all the men around you also under your skirt? She paused and seemed to think of something. She clicked her tongue and said, "By the way, I heard that the two from the Mu family have come to the academy at least 3 times this month. Every time, they look for eighth brother to ask about your whereabouts. Could it be that you played with the feelings of the 2 brothers and deliberately hid from them?" Saying that, Yi Qingqian giggled. Every word, coupled with her soft voice and emphasis, seemed even more ambiguous. Everyone's gazes towards Yi Qing Luo instantly turned dubious. In their hearts, they had long set the shape of the Yi family's female. They were all certain that the Yi family's female was a dissolute and lecherous trash. 15 years of Yi Qing Luo suddenly became extremely powerful, and even got involved with the Overlord. Chapter 7:16. Moreover, Guiyu's change was too sudden. Guiyu had been living like a madman for decades in the Heavenly Academy. Even when the director asked him to teach or take in a disciple, he was rejected. Unfortunately, the moment Yi Qing Luo came, Guiyu seemed to be possessed, clamoring to take Yi Qing Luo as his disciple. And after Yi Qing Luo pushed Yi Fengyu out, Guiyu really agreed to take Yi Fengyu as his disciple. One must know that even if he took in students from the class of gods, Si Yen Mu also wanted to be apprenticed to Guiyu but was rejected by him. Now Guiyu actually took in a new student who was recommended by Yi Qing Luo, a new student who entered the low profound class as his disciple. When this matter spread throughout the entire academy, it became one of the mysterious events that everyone speculated. The most surprising thing was, Yi Qing Luo was assigned to the waste class devil class. The next second, Guiyu, who refused to be a teacher for decades, directly applied to be a teacher in the devil class. It was said that he had done something extremely dangerous for the director in exchange for this opportunity. It could be seen how persistent Guiyu was towards Yi Qing Luo. If there wasn't any special relationship, would the crazy Guiyu, 4 decades, support Yi Qing Luo so strongly? Listening further, the matter of Yi Qing Luo at the Heavenly Fortune Inn and having a meal with those men from the Imperial Palace had been widely spread in the Academy for a period of time. Although those men were from the Imperial Palace. But, if Yi Qing Luo was really innocent with those men, then as a proper young lady, would she drink with so many men, till she was drunk? They responded with suspicion. Now that they heard Yi Qingqian's words and linked it to the Overlord and Master Guiyu's attitude towards Yi Qing Luo, they were even more doubtful. The students had naturally heard of the Mu brothers' matter. The Mu brothers and Yi Qing Luo had once forced the 4th young master of the Yuchi family to retreat. This matter was known by quite a number of people at that time. Someone also mentioned the matter of the new students entering the academy. The Mu brothers had been to the academy and even looked in a certain direction. It seemed that the direction that the Mu brothers were looking at, wasn't it Yi Qing Luo's direction? These words exploded in the mouths of the students. Soon after, someone mentioned that the Mu brothers had come to the institute 3 times this month. Each time, they were looking for Yi Fengyu, and they seemed to be talking mysteriously about something. After that, she also heard Yi Fengyu looking for Lu Xiaoyu to inquire about Yi Qing Luo's whereabouts. It was obvious that the Mu brothers were here to look for Yi Qing Luo. And Yi Qing Luo indeed seemed to have been hiding from the Mu brothers. Could it be, had Yi Qingqian really guessed correctly? At the entrance of the academy, there was a sea of people. There were students, parents, and people from other forces. How powerful were the so-called rumors and slanders? Language could very well become a sharp weapon to kill. Just like now. If Yi Qing Luo wasn't the current Yi Qing Luo, not the Yi Qing Luo with a strong inner heart. If it was someone else, they would have been insulted and ridiculed. They would have been stared at with disdain. Some would even look at them with a lecherous gaze. By now, he was probably so ashamed that he wanted to commit suicide. Yiqing Luo's eyes narrowed slightly as she couldn't help but burst out laughing. Sure enough, a loose woman's thoughts are so dirty. With such a filthy heart, no matter how gorgeous your clothes are or how noble your posture is, you can't hide or wash away your ugliness. She slowly walked towards the direction of the carriage. Step by step, it seemed to be extremely slow. But every step she took seemed as though she had taken 10 steps. In a blink of an eye, she stopped in front of the carriage. In a blink of an eye, she stopped in front of the carriage. Chapter 7:17. Yiqing Qian's hand, which was hooked on the carriage curtains, instantly froze. Her face under her gorgeous makeup was slightly pale. Towards Yiqing Luo, she was afraid and terrified. But she wasn't so scared that she hid behind the carriage. She had already walked to this step. No matter what words were said, it would not be a sharp weapon to hurt her. She wasn't afraid that her actions would attract criticism from others. Anyway, she was already used to it. Looking at Yiqing Qian's eyes, which were obviously filled with fear, but she pretended to be calm as she looked straight at her, Yiqing Luo's smile grew deeper. It's said that only when your inner heart is in turmoil would you use this kind of gaze to look at others. Yiqing Luo smiled lightly as her fingers, which were caressing her chin, were as slender as jade, like congealed fat. She smiled as her peripheral vision shot a look at Ling Fengying, who was seated on the horse's back, as she scoffed softly. She wasn't afraid that Ling Fengying would get off the horse to stop her. Whatever she wanted to do, until now, unless she herself gave up, otherwise no one would be able to stop her. I heard that eldest sister is pregnant. Yiqing Luo's vision shot straight towards Yiqing Qian's abdomen. Her words had just ended when she saw Yiqing Qian pretending to be calm, as a sliver of panic flashed past her beautiful eyes. Yiqing Luo smiled. Her curved eyes outlined a demonic long arc, bewitching and moving. I wonder if this child is the former crown prince's King Ping's child or second prince's child? Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes as she asked this question like an innocent and naive young lady. This question set off a huge uproar. No matter how thick Yiqing Qian's makeup was, or how exquisite it was, she couldn't hide her pitch-black face. Ling Fengying, who was seated on the horse's back, turned stiff as he speedily turned his head towards Yiqing Qian. Yiqing Qian remained silent for a long time, not saying a single word. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes as she continued to use an innocent tone to ask. If it's King Ping's child, then, eldest sister, you brought another man's child with second prince. Are you preparing to let second prince be a father, or are you just pretending to be second prince's child? Saying this, she covered her mouth as she clicked her tongue. I wonder how King Ping, who is far away in his fief, would feel. Yes, seventh young miss. Ling Fengying could no longer tolerate it as he flipped down from the horse's back and called out to stop her. Yiqing Luo's words had completely turned him into a joke. He naturally couldn't allow Yiqing Luo to continue talking. Unexpectedly, when Yiqing Luo heard his voice, she immediately glanced sideways. Her enchanting eyes sparkled with a teasing smile. If this child is the second prince's, then there's a big problem. This child is at least 1.5 months old. That is to say, while eldest sister and King Ping were secretly having an affair, she also had a relationship with the second prince. Ling Fengying's expression turned steely green in an instant. Yiqing Qian's fingers that were tugging on the curtains turned white, as if she was suppressing her anger. Between the two of them, no one spoke. Not even a word of rebuttal. The students in the surroundings immediately started to fill in the blank. Yiqing Qian was pregnant. Whose child was it? This news, as compared to Yiqing Luo's unsubstantiated matters, was much more exciting. After all, the people involved in this love triangle were all big shots with great potential. A former crown prince, a second prince, Three Springs City's famous #1 beauty, #1 genius beauty. The #1 beauty and the former crown prince's relationship had already been announced to the world. Whereas the #1 beauty had hooked up with the second prince, and before the storm had subsided, they were displaying their love wantonly, which was something which everyone had witnessed with their own eyes. Chapter 7:18. Pregnant, pregnant? Yi Fengyu pointed at Yi Qingqian in astonishment as he stared straight at her abdomen. Elder sister, you're pregnant? He was shocked and astonished. But in Yi Qingqian's ears, she only felt that he was playing along with Yi Qingluo, to ridicule her. The carriage curtains were flung down, covering Yi Qingqian's darkening face. The moment the carriage curtains were lowered, Yi Qingluo was standing near and could clearly see Yi Qingqian's trembling petite body as her beautiful eyes shot out a thick murderous intent. Yi Qingluo's lips curled into a cold arc, trying to escape? Trying to leave so easily? She originally told Ling Fengying not to provoke her, so she didn't have the time to bother about Yi Qingqian. Since Yi Qingqian insisted on stirring up trouble, then she would have to bear the consequences of stirring up trouble. 7th Miss Yi. Ling Fengying saw the cold smile on Yi Qingluo's face as he frowned and stood in front of the carriage. These are all misunderstandings. This prince apologizes on behalf of Yi Qingqian for her nonsense earlier. His voice was very loud and his eyes were filled with sincerity. It was as if he had taken out his whole heart. Yi Qingqian's words to Yi Qingluo, based on his understanding of Yi Qingluo, were definitely slander. However, what Yi Qingluo said was the truth. Originally, after he found out that Yi Qingqian was pregnant, Yi Qingqian made a deal with him. As long as it was another month, he would directly acknowledge Yi Qingqian as his child. Giving birth could also be pretended to be premature. But, now that Yi Qingluo exposed him in front of him, and even revealed the time of Yi Qingqian's pregnancy clearly, apparently Yi Qingluo was aware of Yi Qingqian's every move. Of course, Ling Fengying wasn't as dumb as Ling Fenghua. He knew that he couldn't blame Yi Qingluo for revealing this matter on the spot. Yi Qingluo should have known about Yi Qingqian's pregnancy long ago. But she didn't say it out, and from the start till the end, she didn't find trouble with Yi Qingqian. If it wasn't for Yi Qingqian who insisted on stirring up trouble, things wouldn't have escalated to such a stage. Right now, he could only use the name of the prince to testify for Yi Qingluo that what Yi Qingqian said earlier were all nonsense. There's no need for an apology. Yi Qingluo indifferently curled her lips, as her charming eyes were like torches, staring straight at Ling Fengying. She slowly approached him and spoke in a low voice that only the two of them could hear. "Second prince, ever since you got together with my dissolute elder sister, you've been a joke in everyone's eyes." After she finished speaking, she slowly pulled away from the two of them. Ling Fengying's face sunk. Yi Qingluo's smile was like a flower, her curved eyes were filled with ridicule and coldness. Ling Fengying understood. Yi Qingluo was really angry. This also meant that from today onwards, he and Yi Qingqian were on the same side. Ling Fengying's heart thumped as he wanted to explain and refute. But when he opened his mouth, he didn't know where to start. He had been working with Yi Qingqian for so long. He hadn't even recouped his capital, and he had to give up on Yi Qingqian just like that? But, to form an enmity with Yi Qingluo, his future days would definitely not be unimpeded. Eldest sister is hiding in the carriage. Is it because you have a guilty conscience? Yi Qingluo's lips curled into a smile as her figure suddenly swayed. He saw a red remnant shadow flashing past in the air. Following that, he saw Yi Qingluo stepping onto the carriage under Ling Fengying's astonished gaze. She crudely tore open the front of the carriage, and that exquisite and expensive carriage curtains and ornaments, casually throwing it into the crowd. Tightly, her slender fair fingers locked onto Yi Qingqian's neck. She directly lifted Yi Qingqian out of the carriage. Yi Qingluo stood on the carriage, while Yi Qingqian hung vertically by the side of the carriage, both her legs hanging in the air. A gorgeous face, flushed red from suffocation, as her eyes were protruding. Chapter 7:19. Yes, 7th Miss. Ling Fengying swiftly went up, trying to save Yi Qingqian. but he had just taken a step when he heard Yi Qingqian moaning in pain. Ling Fengying's figure halted abruptly as the lines on his face remained gentle, but it was unable to conceal the anger in his eyes. Yi Qingluo's actions had not only rejected his future collaboration, it had also declared that there was no longer any possibility between them. Even if he gave up on Yi Qingqian now, it would not be able to quell Yi Qingluo's anger. Since there was no chance for him to collaborate with Yi Qingluo, he might as well grab hold of Yi Qingqian. Lung Fengying was able to get to where he was today because of his acute sense and the belief that he would never do a losing business. He had sacrificed so much for Yi Qingqian. If he couldn't get something of equivalent value from Yi Qingqian, then wouldn't all his efforts be in vain? It was finally because of Lung Fenghua's stupidity which allowed him to stand out, allowing him to portray a patriotic image. But just because of Yi Qingqian, how much reputation had he ruined? This prince has already apologized for Qingqian's mistake. Why must you force me? Ling Fengying's hands clenched into fists as he put on an earnest and well-intentioned look to persuade her, but didn't get any understanding. Coupled with that gentle and refined look, it indeed made one believe in him. He felt that Yi Qingluo was being unreasonable. If an apology is of any use, it wouldn't be your turn to stand here and point fingers. Yi Qingluo's voice was cold as her eyes were filled with a biting cold glint. Lung Fengying naturally understood the deeper meaning in her word. If an apology was of any use, then would Ling Fenghua be able to continue being the crown prince after apologizing? Would Yi Qingqian be able to continue being the crown prince's concubine after apologizing? There were many things which could not be easily resolved with just an apology. Seeing Ling Fengying keeping silent, Yi Qingluo's pink lips curled upwards as she revealed a frosty smile. You have no bottom line, I do. You have no bottom line, I do. Her voice turned chillier by the minute. If Yi Qingqian only attacked her, perhaps she wouldn't have such a huge reaction. At least, she wouldn't have the intention to kill her. Yi Qingluo held on to Yi Qingjian, who was about to breathe her last as she slowly inched towards her. Her lips were close to Yi Qingqian's ears. Of all the things you shouldn't have done, you shouldn't have dragged the people I care about into this. This was her reverse scale. Dmo Xian, Old Man Guiyu, the students of Devil Class, the Mu brothers etc. These were all people who had given her great help. He was the person she was concerned about, the person she missed dearly. She would not allow anyone to insult her brothers, her team. Yi Qingqian's eyes were filled with terror. Yi Qingqian could clearly feel that her life force was gradually slipping away. She had no chance to move. His throat was being strangled, and it was extremely uncomfortable. She was powerless to struggle, and could only quietly wait for death. And at the instance when he touched death, he heard Yi Qingluo's ghostly voice. Yi Qingluo was extremely close to her. Yi Qingqian could even feel the overbearing aura coming from Yi Qingluo. It was the kind of power that seemed to be able to control everyone's life and death. Let her heart a burst of cramps. Controlling life and death? She didn't believe that Yi Qingluo really dared to kill her in public. You've indeed admitted that those are the people you care about, and their relationship with you isn't shallow. Yi Qingqian spat out the words from the slits of her teeth. Every single word she spat out, her face flushed a shade of red, until the very end, on her bright and beautiful face, her features were already protruding outwards. Chapter 720. Just at this moment, Yi Qingluo clearly saw. In the depths of those eyes which were almost protruding out, a wisp of black qi filled her pupils. Bit by bit, it seeped out. That black qi seemed to have its own consciousness. The moment it seeped out, it swiftly swept towards Yi Qingluo's hand, which was strangling Yi Qingqian's neck. This wisp of black qi, thick and black, was extremely obvious. The surrounding students could almost see it clearly with their naked eyes. Clearly saw. From Yi Qingqian's eyes, balls after balls of black qi were emitting out. There were already quite a number of students shrieking in terror as they rubbed their arms fiercely. This scene was simply too shocking. This was the first time to see such thick black qi emitting from a person's eyes. And that wisp of black qi could even initiate an attack? Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as the other palm flipped. A burst of profound qi directly struck towards that wisp of black qi. The black qi seemed to sense something as it speedily dispersed, as it twined upwards from Yiqing Luo's palm wind. Yiqing Luo's 5 fingers moved as a red feather fan slid out in her hand. Her fingertips flicked lightly on the fan handle, and within a few breaths, that black qi avoided Yiqing Luo's counterattack, and once again surged towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo seemed to be terrified, as she casually threw Yiqing Qian towards the crowd like throwing rubbish. The scene of Yiqing Qian's eyes, which could seep out black qi, was clearly seen by all the students present. Especially when Yiqing Qian's body was thrown out, they could still see a wisp of black qi, as it formed an arc in midair like black smoke. That black qi was emitted from Yiqing Qian's eyes. Naturally, when her body fell onto the ground, those students had already flocked away. Like avoiding the plague, no one dared to go near her. With a thump, Yiqing Qian's body landed heavily on the ground. That bright red dress on her, like a blossoming flower, broke into pieces of flower petals. Yiqing Qian's body rolled a few times on the ground, as the flower petals fell off, leaving only a white ball. It could almost be described as exposure of spring sunshine. The current Yiqing Luo was under thousands of pairs of eyes. Not a single piece of clothing on her. That fair skin, that slender waist, that plump softness, that everything could be seen clearly. Yiqing Qian only felt a chill run down her spine. The surrounding students, some exclaimed in shock, some screamed, and some hissed in disdain. Yiqing Qian realized what had happened. However, her limbs seemed to be bound by something. He couldn't move at all. She could only lie stiffly on the ground, allowing those pairs of eyes to see her whole body. Being insulted by others. All these, Yiqing Qian could take it. But, in front of thousands of people, he became like this. Even that woman couldn't bear it. No matter how hard Yiqing Qian's heart was. At this time, he was on the verge of breaking down and crying. Ling Fengying was completely stunned. Not only was he stunned by the black qi in Yiqing Qian's eyes, and Yiqing Luo's boldness. Leaving a lady's naked body at the entrance of the first academy, this was simply destroying Yiqing Qian completely. Even in death, Yiqing Qian would be spurned by the world. Ruthless, it was too ruthless. Even if it was him, he probably wouldn't be able to do such a ruthless thing. Yiqing Luo totally didn't feel that these actions of hers had caused much of an impact. After she flung Yiqing Qian away, she took out a handkerchief and wiped her hands carefully, as though she had touched something dirty. Chapter 721. Was it cruel? Not really. At least that was what Yiqing Luo felt. If Yiqing Qian knew her place and enjoyed the peace that Ling Fengying had obtained for her, at least before they revealed that the child was pregnant and Ling Fengying had taken over, Yiqing Luo didn't have the time to bother about their trivial matters. All these were Yiqing Qian's own fault. There was a limit to one's tolerance. Last time, Ling Fengying and the 3 old ministers had watched Yiqing Qian and Ling Fenghua's live broadcast. Yiqing Qian totally didn't know how to restrain herself. Then, let her be ruined in front of thousands of people. As long as Yiqing Qian still had a little bit of pride, she should learn to be smart. Yiqing Luo threw her handkerchief onto the ground. She turned her head and looked at the dumbstruck Yi Fengyu as she spoke calmly. "Little Yu, don't you feel that your eyes are dirty?" Yi Fengyu was still in a daze when he suddenly heard Yiqing Luo's voice as he nodded his head vigorously. "So dirty. Since it's dirty, why are you still standing here for?" Yiqing Luo's voice sunk. Yi Fengyu suddenly regained his senses as he immediately shook his head and followed behind Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo turned around and left without even turning her head back. Yi Qingqian's outcome was witnessed by the surrounding students. On seeing Yi Qing Luo walking over, they all opened up a path. All of them were breathing carefully. 7th Miss Yi. Lung Feng Ying stood in a daze on the spot as he looked at Yi Qing Luo's departing figure and subconsciously wanted to call out to her. Yi Qing Luo didn't turn back, but she stopped in her tracks. She is, after all, your elder sister. Even if her nonsense hurt your friend, but you shouldn't do it in front of so many people. Lung Feng Ying's facial muscles twitched slightly. Before this, he had accepted Yi Qingqian by his side and had always declared to the public that he pitied her. After eldest royal brother experienced this matter, his mental state became extremely tyrannical and he would beat Yi Qingqian up whenever he wanted. Every time he saw Yi Qingqian covered in wounds, he simply couldn't bear it. Moreover, the matter that day was because he had led the old minister to the Crown Prince Palace, which led to such a thing happening. He took another look at Yi Qingqian's body and hugged her. Such an excuse would not only make the other old officials and commoners more or less accept it, but it would also make the old officials and commoners feel that the second prince was a kind-hearted person. They would support him even more. But Yi Qing Luo had shown Yi Qingqian's naked body in front of thousands of people. He could no longer use pity as an excuse. It wasn't that he was kind-hearted or benevolent, he was stupid. He was stupid to the extreme. Yi Qing Luo turned her head back and gave a slight smile. Her long and narrow eyes sparkled with an innocent and harmless luster. Anyway, she's already shameless, isn't it? In fact, I admire her courage. She was able to straighten her chest in the face of so many rumors and slanders, pretending that nothing had happened and putting on an unreachable appearance. Her tone was very sincere. But at first glance, it seemed like he was mocking something. But, after she mustered up her courage and walked out of the darkness, she still refused to be left out and let me ride her. So, don't blame me for treating her like one human ride. Something like that. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. Her long curly eyelashes were like butterfly wings, forming a shadow under her eyelids. She obviously looked like a peerless beauty, but the words she said made one tremble in fear. Since second prince likes to pick up trash, then hurry up and pick up this trash back. Don't let her embarrass herself here. Saying that, Yi Qing Luo left in an extremely suave and straightforward manner. Not too long later, she had already disappeared at the corner in front. The surrounding students heaved a sigh of relief because of Yi Qing Luo's departure. Chapter 722. Yi Qing Luo didn't leave immediately. After turning the corner, Yi Qing Luo dragged Yi Fengyu and stood against the wall. She raised her index finger to her lips, indicating Yi Fengyu not to open his mouth temporarily. Following that, her figure was as light as a feather as she leapt onto the roof. She squinted her eyes as she stared intently at the naked Yi Qingqian, who was lying on the ground unable to move. Earlier, when Yi Qing Luo was clutching Yi Qingqian's neck, the silver needle hidden in her fingertips had already pierced into Yi Qingqian's acupuncture point. If she didn't remove the silver needle, Yi Qingqian would not be able to move for the rest of her life. The current Yi Qingqian, because she had lost her life, the black qi had automatically integrated into her pupils, totally not a trace of it could be seen. Yi Qing Luo looked carefully for some time but didn't detect any trace of the dark force's presence. Lass, are you trying to dig out the dark forces behind Yi Qingqian? Old man Tsang's voice rang in her mind. Yi Qing Luo was releasing her perception as she carefully scanned every corner of the academy's surroundings, while replying to old man Tsang's words with her underworld god. The people from the dark forces are much stronger than what I had imagined. I have no intention to go head-on against the dark forces. Yi Qingqian could freely use her dark force's profound yin qi and could control it to carry out attack. It was enough to show that her position in the dark forces wasn't low. Then today, she had made such a big embarrassment in the academy and exposed the black smoke like profound yin qi. The students present were young and didn't understand. But There was no lack of elders from the older generation who came over to fetch their own young masters and young ladies. There were also elders and guards who had more experience in the academy. Naturally, there would be someone who would detect the source of the black chi. It was impossible for the dark forces to hide in the dark like in the past. After a long time, the dark forces who were expelled from Nirvana Realm had once again appeared in Nirvana Realm. Not knowing what kind of uproar would be stirred up in Nirvana Realm after this news was spread. He did not know how the dark forces would deal with the news that the dark forces had returned to the Nirvana Realm. How would Yi Qing Qian, who had exposed her profound Yin Qi, be treated? Stop looking, I can't sense the dark force's presence in the surroundings. Old Man Tsang naturally knew what Yi Qing Luo was thinking as he directly dispelled her thoughts. Yi Qing Luo frowned slightly. Old Man Tsang continued, for these 3 days of training, try your best to stay with your team. If DMO Xian is by your side, that would be even better. Yi Qing Luo was stunned. You mean? The dark forces have always been hiding in the dark. Today, because of you, the news of the dark forces returning to the Nirvana Realm has been exposed. That was to say, even if Yi Qing Luo were to lie in wait in the academy. For the sake of safety, the dark forces would definitely not show up at this time. Whereas for Yi Qing Luo to expose the dark forces, she would definitely be attacked by the dark forces. Girl, after this holiday training ends, you can challenge the 2nd floor of the Purgatory Tower. Old Man Tsang hesitated for a long time before forcefully saying these words. Actually, Old Man Tsang wanted to wait for Yi Qing Luo to have the ability to win before challenging the 2nd story. However, at that time, even if he succeeded in the challenge, the effect would not be too great. Yi Qing Luo belonged to the type of person who grew braver the more she suffered. The stronger her opponent was, the stronger she would be. It would be better to wait for the holiday training to end and maintain that state before challenging the 2nd level. Not only would it stimulate Yi Qing Luo's growth, it might even allow her to have an epiphany and advance at the juncture of life and death. Yi Qing Luo's eyes lit up as she smiled widely. Good. I will train well and fight for my best state to challenge the 2nd floor of the Purgatory Tower. Chapter 723. Yi Qing Luo and Yi Fengyu held hands as they returned to Three Springs Sect. Three Springs Sect's entrance was much bigger than last month's. Madame Yuchi led a bunch of maids as they waited at the entrance. Even the high and mighty old madam was sitting on a soft chair by the side. There were at least 40 over people in total. Sister! Yi Fengyu was stunned by this lineup. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes as she carefully sized up Madame Yuchi's expression as her lips curled into a cold arc. Don't worry, just watch the show. When Madame Yuchi looked at her, there was a stiff smile on her face. But Madame Yuchi's eyes were filled with intense hatred and resentment, as though she couldn't wait to tear her into pieces. Probably. What happened at the Academy's entrance was known by everyone in Three Springs Sect. Otherwise, if it was just to welcome Yi Qing Qian, old Madam would absolutely not be sitting here. Madame Yuchi would also not reveal this. A twisted smile. Seeing Yi Qing Luo and her brother, under old Madam's threatening gaze, Madame Yuchi smiled benevolently as she swayed her slender waist and walked over leisurely. 7th Miss, 8th Young Master, it's been hard on you this 1 month in the academy. Her tone was filled with a thick flattery. She walked towards Yi Qing Luo and stretched out her hand in an attempt to hold Yi Qing Luo's arm, putting on a look of a loving mother doting on her daughter. Since half a month ago, old Madam has been nagging about you and 8th Young Master's holiday, hoping for the stars and the moon. Finally you're back. However, Yi Qing Luo's body moved slightly as she avoided Madame Yuchi's outstretched hand. Madame Yuchi's hand froze in midair. But after all, she was mother and daughter to Yi Qing Qian. Being thick-skinned was their specialty. Even if it was awkward, Madame Yuchi's smile didn't change at all as she held onto Yi Fengyu's arm and continued smiling. Last month, you and 8th Young Master finally had a holiday, but you didn't spend it in the residence. Old Madam wanted to dote on you but didn't have this chance. This holiday, give Old Madam a chance to stay at home and accompany Old Madam." Yi Fengyu wasn't as agile as Yi Qing Luo as he stood rooted to the ground. Obviously, she was stunned by Madame Yuchi's fawning attitude. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as her vision was fixed on Madame Yuchi's hand, which was holding onto Yi Fengyu's arm, as she narrowed her eyes. "Second concubine, the person whom you want to dote on is currently in Second Prince's residence, receiving Second Prince's banquet." His gaze was as sharp as a knife. Madame Yuchi immediately let go of Yi Fengyu and shrank back. Hearing Yi Qing Luo's words, that fawning smile on his face stiffened. Madame Yuchi was on the verge of going crazy after receiving the news brought back by the servant. Her eldest daughter, the eldest daughter she had always been proud of, Yi Qing Luo, had actually exposed the news of her pregnancy in front of thousands of people, and even exposed her eldest daughter completely naked in front of everyone. Completely ruined the relationship between Yi Qingqian and the second prince. Madame Yuchi hated Yi Qing Luo. To Madame Yuchi, Yi Qing Luo was the murderer who ruined her daughter. If it wasn't for Yi Qing Luo, Yi Qing Ling wouldn't have been destroyed and chased out of Three Springs sect residence, not knowing if she was dead or alive. If it wasn't for Yi Qing Luo, Yi Qingqian would be the high and mighty crown princess, the most envied woman in the West Continent. Everything was Yi Qing Luo's fault. If it wasn't for the fact that she no longer had a daughter to rely on. If it wasn't for the fact that old Madam used Three Springs sect's authority to threaten her. Chapter 724. But Yi Qing Luo didn't understand her forbearance at all. She even brought up the matter of Yi Qingqian and the second prince in front of her. Yi Qing Luo had lost all her face because of Yi Qing Luo. From today onwards, Yi Qingqian's drawing would appear in countless brochures. How could the second prince possibly set up a banquet to entertain Yi Qingqian? Even if the second prince really loved Yi Qingqian, he would absolutely not block his own future to be with Yi Qingqian. Looking at the entire royal family, only the second prince could take on the heavy responsibility of the monarch. How would the current monarch allow the woman who was ridiculed by the common people to become the second prince's imperial concubine? Even if Yi Qingqian was willing to be the second prince's concubine, the monarch would never agree. Yi Qing Luo was totally rubbing salt on the wound in her heart. If Yi Qing Luo knew what Madame Yuchi was thinking, she would definitely scoff. Did she need to understand Madame Yuchi's forbearance? Did Madame Yuchi's lowly status have anything to do with her? In the end, it was because she had lost her daughter, and in order to survive in Three Springs sect, she disregarded her pride to please her. It was just for herself, a selfish act. Could she be blamed? Number 7, Number 8, come and help Grandma in. Just when the atmosphere was extremely quiet, old Grand Madame's hoarse voice came into everyone's ears. Yi Fengyu heard and immediately went forward. An old woman took over his luggage from him. Yi Fengyu respectfully held old Grand Madame's left hand and helped her up from the soft chair. Yi Qing Luo didn't go over, but didn't stop Yi Fengyu either. She just walked on her own way and walked into Three Springs sect. Yi Qing Luo wasn't an unreasonable person. Because of her hatred towards the Yi family, she denied the blood relationship between these people and her and Yi Fengyu. For old Grand Madame, who didn't know how to respect others, Yi Qing Luo didn't want to give her the same respect. But she wouldn't be so deranged to not allow Yi Fengyu to show his respect. After all, Yi Fengyu was different from her. In this family, father and old Grand Madame treated him quite well. Since young, he had been taught to give for the Yi family and to respect all the Yi family's elders. The old ancestor was not angry. Supported by Yi Fengyu, the majestic group of people entered the Three Springs sect mansion. Old 7, you've been admitted to the Heavenly Academy for such a long time, but you haven't gone to the ancestral hall to explain to your mother. After dinner, go to the ancestral hall and have a heart-to-heart with your mother. The old ancestor's voice was calm and gentle, no longer as cold and stern as before. Ancestral hall? The old ancestor actually asked her to go to the ancestral hall? One had to know that she, the so-called daughter of the first wife, did not even have the opportunity to enter the ancestral hall. Even if he was punished, the place he stayed the most was the woodshed. In the old ancestor's words, that was, "You're a good-for-nothing who doesn't even have a shred of xian-qi. What right do you have to enter the Yi family's ancestral hall?" In old grandmadame's eyes, she had never treated Yi Qing Luo as a part of the Yi family. Just because she was a good-for-nothing with no cultivation foundation. Today, the old ancestor actually allowed her to enter the ancestral hall and allowed her to talk to her mother? Sure enough, the older, the wiser. The minute she opened her mouth, she poked at Yi Qing Luo's soft spot. Entering the ancestral hall and burning incense for her mother had always been what Yi Qing Luo wanted to do. There were several times when Yi Qing Luo wanted to sneak into the ancestral hall and talk to her mother's memorial arch, but she was beaten out by the servant who guarded the ancestral hall. The old grandmadame's words were to express goodwill to her. Express goodwill?